At exactly 2:17 in the morning, Vincent Callahan grabbed the edge of a table and flipped it, and $60,000 of crystal exploded across the floor of his own restaurant while a sleeping girl jerked awake in the corner booth. He pointed one finger at her and said the word that ended people in Chicago. Out. He did not raise his voice. He never had to. Emily Carter had been awake for 41 hours, and in 9 seconds she was going to lose everything. If you want to see what he did next, subscribe to the channel and stay with the story all the way to the end, and comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled tonight. The glass was still settling when Emily lifted her head. For one full second, she did not know where she was. The world came back to her in pieces, the smell of lemon polish, the low hum of the walk-in cooler, the taste of copper in her mouth from biting her cheek in her sleep. And then the shape of a man standing 11 feet away in a black coat, breathing slow with a table lying on its side at his feet like something he had killed. "Mr. Callahan," she said. Her voice came out wrong, thin, cracked in the middle. "Stand up," he said. She stood up so fast the booth caught the back of her knee, and she stumbled forward, and her hand went out and grabbed the edge of the tablecloth, and a water glass tipped and rolled and fell and broke, and she made a small sound in her throat, like a child who has just made everything worse. "I'm sorry," she said. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing. I wasn't sleeping." Vincent Callahan tilted his head. It was the smallest movement a man could make. But every person who had ever worked for him knew that tilt, and knew it meant a door had just closed somewhere behind you. "You were sleeping," he said. I closed my eyes for a minute. "You were sleeping in my booth, in my dining room, in my building, at 2:17 in the morning, 4 hours after your shift ended." He said it the way a doctor reads a chart. "Do not lie to me twice in the same minute. It's insulting." Emily's hands were shaking. She put them behind her back so he could not see. He saw. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily. Emily Carter." "How long have you worked here?" "Emily Carter." 14 months. 14 months. He looked at the broken crystal on the floor. He did not look at it the way a man looks at money. He looked at it the way a man looks at a mistake he had made himself and hated. "In 14 months, has anyone told you what this room is?" "Yes, sir." "Say it." "It's your private dining room." "And who is allowed in it?" "Nobody." "Nobody," he repeated. "And yet." Emily's throat closed. She had rehearsed 100 conversations in her life. Conversations with landlords, with hospital billing departments, with her mother at 2 in the morning telling her everything was fine when nothing was fine. She had gotten very good at those conversations. She had never rehearsed this one. "You are fired," Vincent said. He said it flatly without pleasure, the way you would say the sun rises in the east. And then something happened that nobody in Chicago had ever seen happen in that room. Emily Carter laughed. It was not a real laugh. It came out of her like air out of a punctured tire, one hard broken sound, and then her hand went up over her mouth and her eyes went wide and horrified because she could not believe she had just done that in front of him. Vincent went very still. "Something funny?" he asked. "No." "You laughed." "I didn't mean to. People don't laugh in this room." "I know." "Then why did you—" And Emily, who had been awake for 41 hours, who had $11 in her checking account, who had a brother in a hospital bed on the 4th floor of St. Ambrose, and a mother who did not know how bad it was, looked up at the most dangerous man in the city and told him the truth. "Because I was going to ask you for a raise tonight," she said. The silence after that was so complete she could hear the refrigeration unit click off in the kitchen. Vincent did not move. "A raise," he said. "I wrote it down." Her hand went to her apron pocket, and she pulled out a scrap of receipt paper folded 4 times soft at the edges from being folded and unfolded all week. "I practiced it in the car. I was going to leave it on your desk because I was too scared to say it out loud. And then I sat down for 1 second. Just one." Her eyes were shining now, and she hated it. She hated it more than anything. "And I woke up and you fired me. That's why I laughed. Because that's exactly how my whole life goes, Mr. Callahan. Exactly." She stopped. She heard herself. She watched the words land on him like snow and disappear, and her stomach dropped straight through the floor. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That was out of line. I'll get my things." She turned. "Carter." She stopped with her back to him. "Turn around." She turned around. Vincent Callahan was looking at her the way a man looks at a wall that has just said his name. "Read it," he said. "What? The paper. You wrote it down. Read it." "Mr. Callahan, I'm fired. It doesn't matter." "I did not ask you what mattered. I asked you to read it." Her hands were shaking so hard she had to press the paper flat against her thigh to open it. And then she read it in a low, ruined voice, in a room full of broken crystal at 2:20 in the morning. "Mr. Callahan, I have worked here for 14 months. I have never missed a shift. I have never been late. I have covered 41 shifts for other servers. I am asking for $2 more an hour. I know that is not how this works. I am asking anyway." She stopped. "That's it," she said. "That's the whole thing. 41 shifts." "Yes, sir." "You counted." "I count everything." "Why?" And Emily said, "Because if I stop counting, I lose track. And if I lose track, somebody dies." The words came out before she could stop them, and once they were out, the room changed. Vincent Callahan had been threatened by federal prosecutors. He had been shot at twice. He had sat across a table from men who had killed other men with their hands, and he had never once felt his own pulse in his ears. He felt it now. "Who's dying?" he asked. "Nobody," Emily said instantly. "That was a stupid thing to say. I'm tired." "Who's dying, Emily?" "Nobody is dying." "You are a terrible liar," Vincent said. "It's the only thing I like about you so far." She stared at him. And then, because she was 41 hours into being awake, because there was nothing left to protect, because she had already lost the job and the paper and the last of her dignity in the space of 4 minutes, Emily Carter told the truth for the second time that night. "My brother," she said. "Danny, he's 19. He's at St. Ambrose. He's been there since March." "With what? They keep changing the word." She swallowed. "It's blood. That's the part that doesn't change." Vincent said nothing. "My mom sold the house in April," Emily said. "We didn't sell it. It got sold. There's a difference. Nobody tells you there's a difference until you're on the sidewalk with a box." She wiped her face fast with the back of her wrist, angry at herself. "I work here 5 nights. I clean offices downtown Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I do a delivery route on Sunday. That's 3 jobs. And I'm still $1,100 short every single month. Every month. So I sat down in your booth because I couldn't feel my legs anymore, and I'm sorry about the glass, and I'll pay for the glass. I don't know how, but I will." She stopped. She looked at the wreckage on the floor, $60,000 of crystal that he had thrown himself. "I'll pay for the glass," she said again, quieter. And Vincent Callahan, for the first time in 11 years, did not know what to say. He looked at the girl in the ruined uniform with the receipt paper in her fist, and something moved inside his chest, something old and buried and locked, and he did not like it. He did not like it at all. "Wait here," he said, and walked out. Emily stood in the middle of the broken glass for 4 minutes. She did not sit. She did not touch anything. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself in a room worth more than her mother's entire life, and she did the only thing she knew how to do. She counted. $11 in checking, $210 in the envelope in the glove box, rent on the 10th, Danny's next infusion on the 14th, Mom's blood pressure medication $40, and Mom had been cutting them in half again. Emily knew she had counted the pills. She was at $940 short when the door opened. Vincent came back in with a man behind him. The man was maybe 60, in a gray suit, with the flat, blank face of a person who had spent 30 years in rooms like this. He was carrying a leather folder. "This is Marco," Vincent said. "He handles my payroll." "Okay," Emily said. "Marco, pull her file." Marco opened the folder. "Carter Emily, hired May of last year, server. Attendance, perfect." Vincent's eyes did not leave Emily's face. "Say that again." "Perfect," Marco said. 14 months, 0 absences, 0 lates. Nobody has perfect attendance. She does. Covered shifts. Marco flipped a page. His eyebrows moved a fraction of an inch, which for Marco was a scream. 41. Emily felt her knees go. 41, Vincent repeated. Yes. In 14 months. Yes. Did anyone ever tell me this? Marco was quiet for exactly 1 second too long. No, he said. Why not? Because she's a server, Marco said carefully. Nobody brings you servers. And Vincent Callahan turned and looked at the $60,000 of glass he had thrown across his own floor over one sleeping girl, and something in his jaw moved. Get out, he said to Marco. Marco got out. The door closed. Sit down, Vincent said. I'm fired. Sit down, Emily. I don't want to sit down. Her voice cracked. If I sit down, I'm going to fall asleep again, and I'm going to wake up, and something else will be gone. That's what happens. I close my eyes and things disappear. So I'm going to stand if that's all right with you. Vincent looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down himself, which nobody had ever seen him do first in any room ever. How much is the treatment? He asked. Why? Answer the question. 6,000 a cycle. There's 4 cycles left. Maybe 6. They won't say. And you make what, 400 a week here? 460 with tips. Good weeks. So the math doesn't work. No, Emily said. The math doesn't work. Then why are you doing it? And that was the question that broke her. Not the firing, not the glass, not the 41 hours. That. Because he's 19, she said, and her voice came apart in her mouth. Because when he was 6, I taught him to ride a bike in the alley behind our house, and he crashed into a garbage can, and he looked up at me from the ground, and he was laughing. He was laughing so hard, and I thought, okay, this one's going to be fine, this one's going to have an easy life. And I was wrong. And now he's in a bed with a tube in his chest, and he still tries to make me laugh. Mr. Callahan, he still does the voice. He does this stupid voice he's done since he was 6 because he thinks if he makes me laugh, I'll stop looking scared. She was crying now, and she did not bother to hide it anymore. The math doesn't work. I know the math doesn't work, but he's 19. So I'm going to keep doing it until it kills me or it kills him. And those are the only 2 ways this ends, and I have made my peace with both of them. The room was completely silent. Vincent Callahan sat in a chair with his hands flat on the table, and he did not look at her. He was looking at nothing. He was looking at a hallway 11 years ago and a phone ringing at 4 in the morning and his own voice saying, I'll call you back, and the 4 hours that came after that. Mr. Callahan. He did not answer. Mr. Callahan. What did you say her name was? He said. Whose name? He blinked. He came back. Something closed behind his eyes like a shutter. Nothing, he said. Nothing. He stood up. You're not fired, he said. Emily's heart stopped. What? You heard me. You said the words. You said I was fired. I'm unsaying them. You can't unsay them. Emily. Vincent's voice went quiet, and it was somehow worse than the shouting would have been. I own this building, I own the block it sits on, and I own the man who holds the paper on the block. I can unsay anything I want. She stared at him, and then, because she was too tired to be smart, she said the thing she should not have said. What do you want? Vincent's eyebrows went up 0.5 millimeter. Excuse me. You heard me. She wiped her face. Her hands had stopped shaking, which surprised her. Somewhere in the last 10 minutes, the fear had burned all the way down, and there was nothing left underneath it but a kind of terrible calm. Men like you don't unsay things for free, so say it. Say what you want, and I'll tell you no, and then I'll go get my coat, and we can both stop pretending this is a kindness. The silence stretched out, and then Vincent Callahan laughed. It was 1 syllable. It sounded like it hurt him. You think I want that, he said. I think everybody wants that. And what would you say? No, Emily said. I would say no. I'd say no with my brother dying on the 4th floor and $11 in my account, and I'd walk out that door and I'd hate myself in the parking lot, but I'd say no. Vincent looked at her. Yes, he said slowly. I believe you would. He walked to the window. He stood with his back to her, and Chicago sat out there in the dark. 12 million lights, all of them his in one way or another. There's a house in Lake Forest, he said. It has 31 rooms, and nobody in it but me and a cook who's afraid of me and a groundskeeper who's been stealing from me for 4 years. Congratulations, Emily said. He almost smiled at the window. It needs to be managed, he said. The estate, schedule staff, deliveries, the accounts. The woman who did it retired in February, and I have not replaced her because I have not been able to stand any of the people they've sent me. What does that have to do with me? You count everything. Emily said nothing. You have covered 41 shifts for people who never covered one for you, Vincent said. You have perfect attendance in 14 months while working 3 jobs and burying a house and sitting in a hospital. You have not stolen from me. I know you have not stolen from me because Marco knows to the penny what walks out of that kitchen every night, and in 14 months your number is 0. He turned around. Do you know how many people in this building have a 0, Emily? No. 1, he said. The word hung there. So here's the arrangement, Vincent said. You keep your shifts here, 4 nights, not 5, and you spend 1 month at the house, days. You run it. You tell me what's broken, and you fix it. 30 days. For how much? For $4,000 a week. Emily's whole body went cold. That's not real, she said. It's real. That's $16,000 in a month. Yes. That's more than my mother made in a year. Yes. No, Emily said. Vincent went still. No. No. She was shaking again, but not from fear this time. You don't do that. You don't dangle $16,000 in front of a woman whose brother is dying and then act like it's a job offer. That's not an offer, that's a leash. I know what a leash looks like. Mr. Callahan, I've been on one my whole life. It just never had a bow on it before. Vincent Callahan stared at her. And for the first time in 11 years, somebody had said a true thing to him out loud. Say that again, he said quietly. I said no. The other part. It's a leash. He nodded slowly. Once. You're right, he said. Emily's mouth opened. You're right, Vincent said again. It is. That is exactly what it is, and you are the first person in this building who has ever said so to my face. Everyone else takes the leash and thanks me for it, and then hates me in the parking lot exactly like you said. He put his hands in his pockets. So let me make you a different offer. One you can actually say no to. I'm listening. $2,000 a week, 30 days, and whatever happens at the end of 30 days, the money is yours, and you never see me again if you don't want to. No contract, no obligation. You walk out on day 1 if you want to, and you keep the first check. Why? Because you'd say no to the other one, Vincent said, and I need you to say yes. Why? Emily said again, and her voice went up. Why do you need anything from me? You have $12 million and 31 rooms and a whole city that flinches when you walk in. Why do you need a waitress? And Vincent Callahan said something that he had never said out loud to another living person. Because you're the only one who's ever laughed. Emily stopped breathing. In 11 years, Vincent said, in this room in that house at those tables in front of judges and cops and men who would put me in the ground if they thought they could, nobody has laughed. Not once. Not a real one. They smile when I tell them to, and they stop when I stop. And you sat there with everything on fire, and you laughed at me. He looked at her. Do you know what that sounded like? Emily shook her head. Neither do I, Vincent said. That's the problem. The silence went on a long time. Emily looked down at the receipt paper in her hand. $2 more an hour. She had practiced it in the car for a week. 30 days, she said. 30 days. And I can quit. Any hour of any day. And you don't touch me. Vincent's jaw tightened. No. Say it. I don't touch you, he said. I don't touch you. I don't ask. I don't imply. And if anyone in that house does, they're gone before lunch. Is that clear enough? Yes. Then say yes. Emily stood in the wreckage of $60,000 of crystal. And she thought about the 14th. And the 6,000. And the pills cut in half in her mother's purse, and Danny doing the voice from the bed with the tube in his chest. Yes, she said. Vincent nodded once. Marco will bring the first check tonight, he said, and walked toward the door. Mr. Callahan. He stopped. The glass, Emily said. What about it? Why'd you throw the table? He did not turn around. Go home, Emily. You threw it before you saw me, she said. I heard it. It woke me up. You threw it, and then you saw me, and then you fired me, not the other way around. She was too tired to be careful, and she knew it, and she did it anyway. So what happened tonight before you walked in here? Vincent stood with his hand on the door. Go home, he said again. Mr. Callahan. Emily. His voice did not rise. It dropped, and the temperature of the room dropped with it. There is exactly one thing in my life that I do not discuss. You've been employed by me for 30 seconds. Do not spend it on that. And he walked out. Emily stood there for a long moment. Then she got a broom. She swept up $60,000 of crystal at 2:40 in the morning because nobody had told her not to, and because her hands needed something to do, and because that was who she was. She was still sweeping when Marco came back in with an envelope. He said to give you this, Marco said. I don't start until Monday. He said tonight. Emily opened the envelope. There was a check inside. She looked at it, and then she looked at it again, and then she sat down on the floor in the broken glass because her leg stopped working. The check was for $2,000. It was dated that day, and under the memo line in small square handwriting, someone had written 4 words. For the 41. Emily put her hand over her mouth. Marco, she said. Yeah. Does he do this? Marco looked at her for a long moment. He was a man who had worked for Vincent Callahan for 19 years and had never once been asked a question he did not want to answer. No, Marco said. Kid, listen to me. Okay. I've never seen that room like this. He nodded at the table on its side, the glass, the whole ruined, beautiful thing. In 19 years, not once. He was angry. He wasn't angry, Marco said. I've seen him angry. Angry is quiet. Emily looked up at him. Then what was he? And Marco said, ask him what today is. What July 9th? Marco said. Ask him what July 9th is, or don't. Probably don't. He picked up his folder. Get your coat. There's a car outside for you. I have a car. Not tonight, you don't, Marco said. He saw it in the lot. He said the tires are bald and it's raining. He said, and I'm quoting him exactly, so don't ask me what it means. He said nobody drives home from this building at 3 in the morning on bald tires. Not while I'm alive. Marco walked out. Emily sat on the floor of the private dining room of the most feared man in Chicago, holding a check for $2,000 with the words for the 41 written in the corner on July the 9th. And out in the parking lot, in the back of a black car with the engine off and the rain coming down, Vincent Callahan sat with his phone in his hand and a photograph on the screen. A girl, 22 years old, dark hair, laughing at something outside the frame. He had not looked at it in 4 years. He looked at it for a long time. Then he turned the phone face down on his knee, and he said to nobody in a voice that nobody in Chicago would have recognized as his, she laughed, soft. He closed his eyes. She laughed. The car was a black Lincoln, and the driver's name was Tomas, and at 3:40 in the morning, he held the door open for a waitress in a stained uniform like she was a senator. You don't have to do that, Emily said. I do, actually. Why? Because he's watching, Tomas said, and did not point and did not have to. Emily got in. The check was in her apron pocket. She could feel it through the fabric the whole way home, the way you can feel a splinter. 26 minutes on the expressway, and she touched it 11 times, and every time she touched it, she thought it's going to bounce. Men like that don't hand you $2,000 at 3 in the morning for nothing. It's going to bounce, and then he's going to own the bounce, and then he's going to own me. That was what she thought. She was wrong about which part to be afraid of. Her mother was awake. Ruth Carter was 63 years old, and she was sitting at the kitchen table of a 2-bedroom rental in Cicero with the lights off and her hands around a mug of tea that had gone cold 2 hours ago. And when Emily came through the door, Ruth did not say, "Where were you?" She said, "Whose car was that?" "Mom." "Emily, whose car?" "It's a work thing." At 4 in the morning. "Mom, please, I've been up since Tuesday." Ruth turned the light on. She looked at her daughter for a long moment. The uniform, the eyes, the way she was standing like her body was a thing she was borrowing and would have to return in poor condition. "Sit down," Ruth said. "I have to sleep." "Sit down." Emily sat down, and she took the check out of her apron and put it on the table between them because she was too tired to build the lie. Ruth looked at it. She did not touch it. That was the part Emily would remember for a long time afterward. Her mother did not touch it. $2,000, Ruth said. Yes. From who? My boss. Emily. It's a job, Mom. It's a real job. He wants me to run his house. Run his house, Ruth said. 30 days, $2,000 a week. That's $8,000, Mom. That's Danny's 14th, and his next one after that. That's both of them. That's... And her voice cracked, and she stopped and pressed her mouth shut. Ruth said very quietly, What does he want? Nothing. Emily, Ruth Carter, what does he want? And Emily said, He wants me to laugh. Ruth stared at her. I know how that sounds, Emily said. I know exactly how that sounds. I was standing in a room full of broken glass at 2:30 in the morning, and it sounded insane to me too. But he said it like it cost him something. He said nobody's laughed at him in 11 years, and I did, and he wants to know what that sounds like. She rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. He's not a good man, Mom. I'm not sitting here telling you he's a good man. He fired me and unfired me in the same 4 minutes, and he didn't blink either time. But he didn't want that. I asked him straight out, and he looked at me like I'd slapped him. Ruth sat there. Then she pushed the check back across the table with one finger. I want you to hear me, Ruth said. Mom, I want you to hear me say this one time, and then I'm never going to say it again, because you're 25 and you're the one keeping this family alive. And I lost the right to tell you anything the day I lost that house. Her chin was shaking. There is no amount of money on this earth worth what men like that take. Not 8,000, not 800,000. And if you tell me right now that you understand that I will never ask you about it again, and I will take the money, and I will thank God for it, and I will not sleep for 30 days. Emily looked at her mother. I understand it, she said. Ruth nodded. Then she picked up the check and held it, and her whole face came apart, and she made a sound that Emily had heard exactly twice in her life. Once when the police came about her father, once in a hospital hallway in March. The 14th, Ruth said. I know. I was going to call them tomorrow and ask if we could... Ruth stopped. She wiped her face fast. I was going to ask if we could skip one. I had the number written down. Emily closed her eyes. You were going to ask them to skip one? She said. I wasn't going to tell you. Mom? I wasn't going to tell you, Ruth said again, and that was the whole argument. That was the entire architecture of the Carter family in one sentence, and both of them knew it. At 9:02 the next morning, on 4 hours of sleep, Emily walked into a bank branch on Cermak and put the check on the counter, and the teller's face did the thing faces do. One moment, the teller said. Is there a problem? I just need to have someone look at this. Is there a problem with the check? One moment, ma'am. The teller walked away with the check in her hand, and Emily stood there in her cleaning clothes with her hair up in a rubber band and felt the entire branch look at her. She counted the tiles on the floor. 19 across. She counted them twice. The manager came out. He was maybe 40 with a lanyard, and he had the check in his hand, and he had the face of a man who had already decided something. Ma'am, can I ask how you came into possession of this? It's my paycheck. This is a Callahan Holdings account. I know. Ma'am, I'm going to be honest with you. We get a lot of... And he stopped, because he had turned the check over. And whatever was on the back of that check, Emily never saw it because the manager's face went a color she had never seen on a human being. He looked up at her, then down, then up. Would you like that in cash or deposit? He said. Would you like that in cash or would you like it deposited? You just said, I'd like to apologize for the wait, Miss Carter. He was already counting. His hands were not steady. Cash or deposit? Deposit, Emily said. All of it, deposit. She walked out into the parking lot and sat in her car with the bald tires and put both hands on the steering wheel and did not move for 6 minutes. Because two things were true at the same time. The money was real. And whatever was written on the back of that check had turned a bank manager gray. Saturday night, she worked her shift. That was when she learned what it costs. She had been at Callahan's for 14 months. She knew every server by name, knew whose kid had a recital, knew who was fighting with who. She had covered 41 shifts, and on Saturday night, she walked into the side station, and the talking stopped. Just stopped. Like a radio unplugged. Hey, Emily said. Nobody said hey. Delia was rolling silverware and did not look up. Bree was pretending to count checks. Ray, the floor manager, cleared his throat and found something to do in the walk-in. "Okay," Emily said. "Somebody say it." "Nobody's saying anything," Delia said. "Delia, it's not my business. Say it." And Bree, who was 22 and had never learned how to hold anything, said, "Is it true you were in the private room?" Emily's stomach dropped. "I fell asleep." "That's not what Petey says." "What does Petey say?" Nobody answered. "What does Petey say, Delia?" Delia put down the silverware. She had been a server for 19 years, and she had a face like a closed door. "Petey says he saw you come out of there at 2:45 and get in Callahan's car," she said. "Petey says the room was wrecked. Petey says Marco walked you out with an envelope." She looked at Emily. "You want me to keep going because there's a version going around this building right now, and it's got a lot more detail than that, and I'm not going to say it out loud because I've known you 14 months and I like you." Emily stood there. 14 months, 41 shifts, Delia's daughter's graduation, Bree's flu, Ray's back surgery, all of it. She had covered all of it. She had said yes every single time. "He offered me a job," Emily said, "at his house, managing his house. That's it. That's the whole thing." "Okay," Delia said. "You don't believe me." I said okay. "Delia, I believe you," Delia said, and she meant it. And that was somehow worse, because then she said, "It doesn't matter if I believe you. That's what I'm trying to tell you, honey. It doesn't matter what's true. You went in that room and you came out with an envelope and now you're a story. And there is no way to unbe a story." She picked the silverware back up. "So go be careful and don't come back here looking for anybody to have your back because we're not going to. Not because we hate you, because we're scared of him, all of us, every day. And now you're on the other side of that." Emily could not breathe. "I covered your shift," she said, "in May, when your mother had her hip." Delia's hands stopped. "I know," she said. "I worked a double and then I worked your close, and then I went to the hospital and sat with my brother until 6 in the morning. I know. And you can't look at me." Delia looked up, and her eyes were wet, and her voice was flat, and she said, "That's right, I can't." Emily worked her whole shift. She smiled at every table. She made $91 in tips. And in the parking lot at 11:40, she sat in her car and cried for exactly 4 minutes, and then she stopped because Danny's cycle was on the 14th, and there was no time in the budget for this. Sunday, she did her delivery route, and then she went to St. Ambrose, 4th floor, room 411. "There she is," Danny said. "There's the moneymaker." "Shut up." No, I heard you got a rich boyfriend." Emily stopped in the doorway. "Who told you that?" Ma told you." "Ma told me you got a job at a big house, and then she cried for like an hour, so I filled in the blanks myself." Danny grinned at her. He was 19. He weighed 126 pounds. There was a line in his chest and a bruise on his arm the size of a plum, and he grinned at her like they were both in the alley behind the old house and he had just crashed into a garbage can. "So is he rich?" "Danny." "Is he old?" "He's 38. "That's old." "That's not old." "That's 14 years, Em. That's like a whole Danny." He was doing the voice now, the stupid one, the one he had done since he was 6, and Emily could feel her eyes going, and she turned toward the window so he would not see. "That's a whole additional Danny of age difference. I'm just saying, structurally. He's my boss." "Uh-huh." "He's my boss, Daniel." "Does he know about me?" And that stopped her. She turned around. "What? Does he know about me?" Danny said, and he was not doing the voice anymore. Emily sat down on the edge of the bed. "Yes," she said. Danny nodded slowly. "Then he's not doing it because he likes you," he said. "Danny." "No, listen to me." Her little brother, 126 pounds, took her hand. "I've been laying here since March, right? And I've had a lot of time. And you learn stuff. You learn that when somebody finds out you're dying, one of two things happens. Either they get further away or they get closer. And the ones who get closer, they're not doing it for you." He squeezed her hand. "They're doing it because they've got a dead person of their own. That's it. That's the only reason anybody runs toward this." Emily sat very still. She thought about a man throwing a table across a room at 2:17 in the morning before he ever saw her. She thought about Marco saying, "Ask him what July 9th is." Yeah. Is he safe? And Emily said, "I don't know yet." That's not a no. No, she said. It's not a no. Monday at 6:50 in the morning, the black Lincoln came to Cicero. Lake Forest was 41 minutes north, and Emily counted every one of them, and when the gate opened, she understood something she had not understood before. It was not a house. It was a monument to a man who had decided that nothing would ever be out of place again. 31 rooms, and in the kitchen at 7:32, Emily met the cook. "Lucia," the woman said. She was maybe 55. She did not shake Emily's hand. "You're the new one." "I'm Emily." "You're the new one," Lucia said again. "Coffee is at 7, not 7:05, not 6:55, 7. He takes it black and he takes it standing and he does not say good morning, so don't say it to him." "Okay." "He walks the ground floor before he leaves, every door, twice, sometimes 3. Emily stopped. "Every door, every door." "Why?" Lucia turned around and looked at her. "That's your first question," she said. "Should it not be?" "Nobody asked that question," Lucia said. "Everybody who works here has seen it, and nobody has ever asked me that question. You've been in this house 11 minutes. So what's the answer?" And Lucia said, "Ask him what July 9th is." Emily's blood went cold. "That's the second time somebody said that to me." "Then it's the second time somebody's warned you," Lucia said and went back to the eggs. Emily worked. That was the thing about her. The thing that had gotten her through 14 months and 41 shifts and a house sold out from under her family, the thing Vincent Callahan had seen in a payroll file at 2:30 in the morning. She counted. By day 3, she had every schedule in the house on paper. By day 5, she had the vendor accounts. By day 6, she knew that the linen service was billing for 11 changes a month in a house where one man slept. And by day 7, she had gone through every invoice in that estate going back 4 years. And on day 9 at 4 in the afternoon, she found it. Del Voigt, groundskeeper, 19 years. The landscaping invoices were the tell. They were beautiful. They were perfect. They were the same 11 line items every single month, and 8 of those line items were for a property with a swimming pool. There was no swimming pool. Emily sat with the numbers for 2 hours. She did it 4 times because she wanted to be wrong. $4,100 a month. 4 years. $196,800. She sat in that beautiful empty office and looked at the number, and she thought about $11 in a checking account and a mother cutting pills in half and a woman on a phone about to beg a hospital to skip a cycle. And she thought this man has stolen a Danny. He has stolen 32 cycles. He has stolen my brother's entire life out of a pocket so deep the owner never felt it. Then she went and found Del Voigt. He was 66 years old and he was coiling a hose. "You're the new girl," he said. "I'm Emily. Del. Del, can I ask you about the pool?" The hose stopped moving. He did not turn around for maybe 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds, Emily watched a man's whole life happen to him. "There's no pool," he said. "I know." He turned around. He was not angry. That was the part that undid her. He looked almost relieved. 4 years, he said. 4 years and 1 month. "You counted." "I count everything." Del Voigt sat down on an overturned bucket like his legs had made the decision for him. "You gonna tell him?" he asked. "I don't know." "That's a no." "That's an I don't know." "Kid, if it was a yes, you'd have gone to him. You came to me." He wiped his hands on his pants. "So let's do this the fast way because I've been waiting 4 years for somebody to walk out here and say the word pool, and now you did and my heart's going like a rabbit, so let's just do it fast." He looked up at her. "My wife's got the same thing your brother's got." Emily's whole body went cold. "How do you know about my brother?" "Everybody knows about your brother," Del said. "Marco told Lucia, and Lucia told me. There's 9 people work in this house, and there's nothing else to talk about." He shrugged. "Her name's Carol, 43 years married. It's in her bones now, and I make $62,000 a year, and the insurance stops at 90, and it costs 120, so I invented a swimming pool." He said it flat. "That's the whole crime. That's the whole thing. I'm not a mastermind, honey. I'm a 66-year-old man who learned to use a spreadsheet at night. Emily could not speak. So go ahead, Del said. I'm not going to. Go ahead, he said, and his voice went up for the first time. Because here's what you're not saying. You're standing there doing the math. You're going, that's $196,000. That's Danny. Right? That's what you're doing. You're standing there thinking this old thief took my brother's medicine. Emily's eyes filled. Yeah, she said. That's right, Del said. And you're right, I did. Except I didn't take it from Danny. I took it from a man with 31 rooms who has never once in 19 years looked at a landscaping invoice. He stood up. And now you're going to have to decide what kind of person you are, and I'm going to have to stand here while you do it, and that's fair. That's fair. I've had 4 years of sleep I didn't earn. Then he said the thing that Emily would hear in her head for the rest of her life. But before you go up there, Del said, you should know something. What? He already knows. Emily stopped breathing. What? He's known since year one, Del Voigt said. Marco found it in the first 6 months. Marco brought it to him with the whole file, dates, numbers, everything. The old man's mouth twisted. And Callahan looked at it and he said, leave it, that's all. 2 words, leave it. And Marco left it. And every month for 4 years, that money has gone out of that account, and that man has known, and he has never said one word to me. Not one. He looks right through me like I'm a hedge. That's not possible. Ask Marco. He fires people for being 4 minutes late, Emily said. He fired me for falling asleep. He threw a table across a room. I know. He has stolen $200,000 from him and he does nothing. That's right. Why? And Del Voigt said, that's the thing I've been scared of for 4 years, kid. Because a man who catches you and fires you, that's a man. But a man who catches you and lets you keep going and never says a word. He picked up his hose. That's not mercy. That's a leash. He's just never pulled it. Emily went up to the house. Vincent got home at 7:40. She was standing in the front hall with the folder in her hands, and she had been standing there for 2 hours, and she had rehearsed it 11 times. He came through the door. He put his keys in a bowl. He did not say hello, and then he walked past her, and he checked the door he had just come through. He checked it twice. Emily watched him do it, his hand on the handle. Pull, pull again. Then the deadbolt with his thumb, and then he stood there for 1 full second with his palm flat on the wood like a man listening for something on the other side. Then he turned around and saw her face and knew instantly that she had watched. Say it, he said. Say what? Whatever it is you've been standing in my hallway for 2 hours to say. Marco called me at 5:30. He said you'd been in the vendor files since Tuesday and you hadn't eaten, so say it. Emily held out the folder. He did not take it. Say it out loud, he said. Del Voigt has been stealing $4,100 a month for 4 years and 1 month, Emily said. $196,800 through fake landscaping invoices for a pool that doesn't exist. Vincent nodded. That was all. He nodded. Okay, he said. And Emily's voice went up and out of her before she could catch it. Okay. Is there something else in the folder? Is there? She took a step toward him. You knew. Yes. You knew. Marco brought it to me in the first year. You knew when you did nothing. I told him to leave it. 2 words. 2 words, Vincent agreed, and something snapped in Emily Carter that had been bending for 4 months. You fired me, she said. Emily, you fired me for closing my eyes. Her hands were shaking. You stood in that room and you listed my crimes like a judge. Sleeping, rules, the private area. You said the words you are fired, and I could not breathe, Mr. Callahan, I could not breathe, because I had $11, and my brother has a tube in his chest, and you fired me for 11 minutes of sleep. She was crying and she did not care. And that man has taken $200,000 out of your pocket for 4 years and you let him. You let him. So you tell me what the difference is. You tell me what I did that was worse than that. The house was completely silent. Vincent Callahan stood there in his coat. You want the real answer, he said. Yes. You won't like it. I don't care. You're sure? Say it. And Vincent said, because Del Voigt found her. The floor dropped out of the world. Emily's mouth opened. Nothing came out. What? She said. You heard me. Found who? Vincent did not answer. Found who, Mr. Callahan. He walked past her. Don't do that, Emily said. Don't you do that. He kept walking. Vincent. He stopped. It was the first time she had ever said his name, and it landed in that hallway like a dropped plate, and he stopped with his back to her, and his shoulders were not the shoulders of a man who owned a city. 19 years he's worked here, Vincent said. 19. And in 19 years, he has done exactly one thing for me that mattered, and it took him 11 minutes, and he was 62 years old, and he ran the whole way. His voice did not change. That was the horror of it. It did not change at all. So he can have the money. He can have $200,000. He can have $400,000. He can invent a swimming pool and a tennis court and a runway if he wants. I don't care. He gets to steal from me until one of us is dead. Vincent? That's the answer, he said. You asked, and that's the answer, and now we're done with it. Who did he find? Vincent stood there. Go home, Emily, he said. That's what you said the first night. And you didn't listen then either. Who did he find? And Vincent Callahan turned around, and Emily took a step back because his eyes were wrong. They were not angry. They were the eyes of a man standing in a doorway 11 years ago with a phone in his hand. Ask me a different question, he said quietly. No. Ask me a different question, Emily. Please. Please. He said, please. And Emily Carter, who had $11.41 shifts and a mother who cut pills in half, stood in the hallway of a house with 31 rooms and heard the most feared man in Chicago say please, and she understood all at once that she was not standing in front of a mafia boss. She was standing in front of a person who had been holding a door shut with his whole body for 11 years, and she had just put her hand on the knob. So she asked a different question. What is July 9th? Vincent Callahan closed his eyes. Get your coat, he said. Tomas will drive you. Vincent, get your coat. He walked up the stairs and did not look back. Emily stood in that hallway for a long time. Then she did not get her coat. She went to the kitchen and Lucia was there, and Lucia took one look at her face and turned the water off. He told you something, Lucia said. Lucia. No. I didn't ask yet. You don't have to ask, I can see it on you, and the answer is no. The cook's hands were shaking. I have worked in this house for 9 years, and I have a daughter in Rogers Park, and I am not going to be the one who told you. Told me what? Emily. Lucia, please. And the cook said, go home. Everybody in this house keeps telling me to go home. Emily's voice cracked open. I have been here 9 days, and every single person in this building has told me to go home, and nobody will tell me why. And I have a brother who is dying. Do you understand me? I have a brother who is dying on the 4th floor of St. Ambrose, and I took this job because his cycle is on the 14th, and I need $8,000, so I am not going home. I'm not. So either tell me or don't, but stop telling me to go home. Lucia stood there. Then she reached up and turned off the light over the stove, which was a strange thing to do, and Emily realized later it was so that she would not have to be looked at while she said it. 9 years ago, Lucia said, there was a girl in this house. Emily's heart stopped. She had a room upstairs, the one at the end of the east hall. Lucia's voice was very small. That's the only door in this house that's locked, and he's got the only key, and once a year he goes in there and stays all night, and nobody goes near that hallway on the 9th of July. Who was she? That's all I know. Lucia. That's all I know, the cook said. 9 years, and that's all I know, and I have never wanted to know more. Now please, please, go home. At 10:15 that night in the back of the Lincoln on the expressway, Emily Carter did something she had never done. She lied to her mother on the phone, said the day was fine, said the house was nice. Then she hung up and sat in the dark and thought about 11 minutes. A 62-year-old man ran for 11 minutes. And when he got there, it was too late, because when a thing takes 11 minutes, it is always too late. And Vincent Callahan had spent every day since checking every door in his house twice, 3 times 4, because a door is the only thing in this world a man can actually control. Emily put her hand over her mouth. Tomas, she said. Yes, turn around. Ma'am, turn the car around. He said to take you home. Tomas. Her voice was steady, which surprised her. Turn the car around. At 11:06, Emily Carter walked back into a house she had no business being in and up a staircase she had never used and down the east hall. There was one door at the end. She stood in front of it. Her hand was on the knob before she made the decision, which is how all the real decisions of her life had ever been made, and she was thinking, it's locked, of course it's locked. He has the only key, and I'll just stand here for 1 second, and then I'll go, and nobody will ever know. I came. It was not locked. The knob turned under her hand, and from the dark at the other end of the hall behind her, in a voice she had never heard him use, Vincent Callahan said, "I left it open for you." At 11:06 at night in a hallway she had no business being in, Emily Carter took her hand off the knob like it had burned her. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "Don't." Vincent Callahan came out of the dark at the other end of the hall. He was not wearing his coat. That was the first thing she noticed, and it was the strangest thing she had ever seen because in 14 months at the restaurant, she had never once seen him without it. He was in shirt sleeves. His collar was open. He looked like a man somebody had gotten halfway through undressing before they gave up. "Don't apologize," he said. "You've apologized twice tonight, and both times it was a lie. You're not sorry. You're terrified. Those aren't the same thing, and you should stop letting people confuse them." "I told Tomas to turn the car around." "I know. He called me from the gate." "He called you." "Everyone calls me," Vincent said. "That's the whole job." Emily's back was against the door. She could feel the wood through her shirt. "You said you left it open." "I did." "When?" "9 days ago," he said, and Emily's stomach turned over. 9 days, she said. "The morning you started." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see how long it would take you." He said it plainly without cruelty, which somehow made it worse. Everyone who has ever worked in this house has been told the same thing about that door. Locked. Only key. Don't go near it. 9 years and nobody has ever touched that knob. Not the cleaners, not Marco, not Lucia, and Lucia has been in every drawer in this house. "That's not a test," Emily said. "That's a trap." "Yes. You admit that." "I don't lie about what I am," Vincent said. "I lie about almost everything else." She wanted to hit him. She had never wanted to hit anybody in her life. Not her father, not the man from the bank with the clipboard who had stood on their lawn in April, and she wanted to hit this man in the mouth right now with everything she had. 9 days you've been watching that door," she said. "Yes. To see if I'd break. To see if you'd look," Vincent said. "There's a difference. Everybody in my life is dying to know. Not one of them has the guts to be caught knowing. They want it handed to them so it isn't their fault." He put his hands in his pockets. "You put your hand on it, in the dark, with nobody watching in a house where you've been told 9 separate times to go home. You are the only person in 11 years who wanted to know badly enough to be caught. And now I'm caught. Now you're caught. So what happens?" And Vincent said, "Now you decide whether you turn it." The hallway was very quiet. "Because I'm not going to open that door for you, Emily. I've never opened it for anybody. If you want it, you take it, and then you don't get to say later that I put it on you." His voice went flat and low. "That's the only honest way I know how to do this. It's the only honest thing I've got left, so I'm giving you the whole of it. Turn it or don't." Emily stood there with her hand at her side. At 11:11 at night, she turned it. The door came open. And what she found on the other side of it broke her in a way that nothing in her whole life had managed. It was a girl's room. Not a shrine, not a memorial, not the kind of thing a rich man builds. There was a bed with a duvet that had been white once and had gone the color of weak tea. There was a desk. There was a chair with a sweatshirt over the back of it, sleeves inside out the way you take a sweatshirt off when you're in a hurry, and you're 22, and you'll put it back on in 10 minutes. Nobody had put it back on in 11 years. There were textbooks on the desk. There was a coffee cup with a ring dried in the bottom. There was a phone charger plugged into the wall, and the little end of it was lying on the nightstand, exactly where a person drops it when they're going to pick it back up. And Emily understood all at once, standing in the doorway, that this was not a room somebody had preserved. It was a room somebody had refused to clean. Her name was Sophia, Vincent said from the hallway. Emily could not turn around. She was 22. She was in her 3rd year at DePaul. She was going to be a physical therapist, which I thought was the stupidest thing I had ever heard, and I told her so. And she said, "Vinny, you break people for a living. Somebody in this family ought to put them back together." His voice did not shake. It was worse than shaking. "That's the last joke she ever made to me that I laughed at. 9 months before." "Vincent, she was my sister." Emily put her hand over her mouth. "She lived in this house for 4 years because I made her," Vincent said. "She wanted an apartment in Lincoln Park with 2 girls from her program, and I said no. She was 22 years old, and I said no, and I meant it, and I made it stick because I had enemies, and she was the only thing on this earth anybody could take from me." A breath. "So I put her here. 31 rooms, gate, cameras, 2 men on the property at all times. I built her the safest room in the state of Illinois, and I locked her in it, and I called it love." Emily turned around. He was standing 11 feet away in the dark hall, and he had not come 1 step closer to the door. "You don't come in," she said. It was not a question. "No. Ever?" "Once a year," Vincent said. "For a few hours, on the 9th. "That's today." "That was 8 days ago," he said. "The night you fell asleep in my booth." And the whole world reorganized itself in Emily's head. The table. $60,000 of crystal thrown across a room at 2:17 in the morning by a man who never raised his voice. "July 9th, she said. "July 9th. That's why you threw it." "That's why I threw it. And then you found me sleeping." "And then I found you sleeping," Vincent said, "in the one chair in that entire building she used to sit in when she was little. That booth. That exact booth. She'd do her homework there while I did the books. Nobody sits in it. In 11 years, nobody has ever sat in it, because everybody in that building knows, and you didn't know, because you're a server, and nobody tells servers anything." Something moved in his face and got put away. "So I walked in on the worst night of my year, and there was a girl asleep in Sophia's chair." Emily's eyes were streaming. "You fired me because I sat in her chair." "I fired you," Vincent said, "because for 1/2 of 1 second before my brain caught up, I thought it was her." The silence after that was so big, Emily thought she could hear the house breathing. "Oh, God," she said. "And then you woke up," he said, "and you weren't her, and I had to stand there and watch you not be her in real time in front of your face. So I fired you, because I needed you out of that room in the next 9 seconds, or I was going to come apart in front of an employee, and I have not come apart in front of anybody since I was 27 years old." "Vincent." "And then you laughed," he said. Emily could not speak. "She laughed like that," he said. "Not the sound, nothing like the sound, but that thing where it comes out of you sideways at the exact wrong moment because everything's on fire, and your body just—" He stopped. He actually stopped. He looked at the floor. "She did that. At our mother's funeral she did that. Right in the middle of it. And she slapped her own hand over her mouth exactly the way you did, with that horrified look, like she'd broken something." He looked up. "So that's your answer," Vincent said. "That's the whole answer to the question you asked me in the hallway. You wanted to know why a man who fires people for 4 minutes lets a thief take $200,000. You wanted to know why I unfired you. You wanted to know what July 9th is. It's all the same answer, Emily. It's all one answer, and the answer is that I am not a strong man. I'm a man who has been standing in a doorway for 11 years. Emily wiped her face with both hands. "What happened to her?" she asked, and Vincent Callahan said, "Ask me tomorrow." "No, Emily, no," her voice cracked. "You made me turn that knob. You made me be the one. You said that was the honest way, and I did it. I did the honest thing. I put my hand on it with nobody watching. So don't you stand out there in the dark and tell me to come back tomorrow. Tell me what happened to your sister." He did not answer. "Vincent, there's a thing you don't understand about this," he said finally, "and it's going to change how you look at me, and I have gotten used to the way you look at me in 9 days, and I would like one more night of it." Emily's chest caved in. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said," she said. "Yes. And it's still a stall." "Yes. Say it anyway." At 11:31, in a hallway outside a room nobody had cleaned in 11 years, Vincent Callahan told her, She called me at 4:06 in the morning, he said. I was downtown. I had a room at the Drake because I'd been up all night with two men from Detroit who were trying to decide whether to kill me, and it had gone well, and I was drinking a scotch and feeling like the smartest man in Chicago. He said it evenly. And my phone rang, and it said Sophia, and I looked at it, and I thought she's 22, and it's 4 in the morning, and she wants to fight about the apartment again. Emily's hands went to her mouth. And I picked it up, he said, and I said, I'll call you back. The hall was silent. That's it, Vincent said. That's the whole sentence. I'll call you back. 4 words. I didn't even let her say hello. I heard her breathe in one time to start a sentence, and I said, I'll call you back, and I hung up, and I put the phone face down on the bar. Vincent. She had gone downstairs, he said, because she thought she heard something at the back of the house. And she was right. She'd heard something. And she did the thing I taught her, which was, call your brother first, because I had told her 50 times, don't call the police first. Sophia, the police in this city work for people who work for me. Call me first. Always call me first. And she did. A long breath. She did exactly what I taught her to do. She did the one thing right. And I said, I'll call you back. Emily's legs were shaking. Who was it? It doesn't matter. Vincent. It doesn't matter, he said. And for the first time, his voice went up and it filled that hallway like water filling a room. It doesn't matter who it was. It was a man. It was a man with a debt and a bad idea. And he thought the house was empty because my car was downtown, and he came in the back, and it doesn't matter because he's been dead for 11 years, Emily. He's been dead since the following Tuesday, and it changed nothing. Nothing. I found him in 11 days, and it changed nothing. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I did the only thing I know how to do. I did it perfectly. I did it beautifully, and my sister was still dead on Wednesday. He stopped. He had one hand flat against the wall. Emily had never in her life been so frightened of somebody and so unafraid of them at the same time. Dell found her, she said. Vincent's head came down. Dell found her, he said. 11 minutes. He was at the gatehouse. He heard glass. He was 62 years old, and he ran the whole way across that property in the dark with a flashlight and a garden spade, because that was what was in his hand. Vincent's voice was almost gone. 11 minutes. He got there in 11 minutes, and she was still. He stopped. She was still there. She was still there when he got there. And he sat down on that floor, and he held her, and he called me, and I was still at the bar with my phone face down. Emily made a sound. He held my sister while she died, Vincent said, because I wouldn't pick up the phone. The hall was completely still. So he can steal from me, Vincent said. You understand, he can invent a swimming pool. He can invent a golf course. He can take everything I have one invoice at a time for the rest of his life, and I will never say a single word to him because there is not enough money in the state of Illinois to pay a man for those 11 minutes, and both of us know it, and so we have this arrangement instead. He takes what he needs, and I let him, and neither of us ever says her name. That's the closest thing to a conversation we've had in 11 years. Emily was crying so hard she could not see. He thinks you don't know, she said. He knows I know. He told me it was a leash. He said it's not mercy, it's a leash you've never pulled. Of course he did, Vincent said. Because he's been carrying it for 4 years and it's eating him. He wants me to fire him. That's what the pool is. Emily, 4 years he's been holding a sign up over his head that says, catch me, catch me, catch me, and I won't do it. Because the day I fire Del Voigt is the day I finally get to be angry at him, and I would rather lose $200,000 a year than find out I'm the kind of man who's angry at the only person who ran. Emily put her back against the doorframe and slid down it and sat on the floor of the hall. She sat there for a while. Then she said, his wife has it too. I know. You know. Carol. 43 years. It's in her bones. You know, and you've never... She looked up at him. Vincent, you have 31 rooms. You could pay for it. You could write a check tonight. And say what? Say. Say what, Emily? And there it was, the crack right down the middle of him. Walk out there and say, Del, I know about the pool I've always known. Here's $120,000 for Carol. And by the way, thank you for holding my sister. Is that the sentence? Do you want to hear that sentence out loud? Because I've written it in my head 900 times, and every version of it ends with me buying my way out of the worst thing I ever did, and he'd take it. That's the thing. He'd take it because Carol's dying. He'd have to take it, and then it would be a transaction. Then it's paid. Then it's over, and I'm clean. His voice went to nothing. I don't get to be clean. Emily stared at him, and she understood something so completely that it took the air out of her. You don't want to be forgiven, she said. He didn't answer. That's what this is. That's the whole house. She was talking fast now. She couldn't stop it. The doors, twice, 3 times. Lucia says sometimes 4. You're not checking the doors. Vincent, you know the doors are locked. You locked them. You're the one who locked them. You're doing penance. Every night. You've turned your whole life into a punishment, and you're the guard and the prisoner, and you won't let yourself out. Emily, and now I'm in it, she said. Now I'm inside it. You put me in this house because I looked at you like a person for 11 seconds, and you needed to know if it would hold up. And it's not working. Is it? It's not working because you can't stand it either way. If I stay, you have to be seen. And if I go, you get to be alone, which is what you actually want, and you don't know which one you're rooting for. Vincent Callahan stood in the dark with his hand on the wall. You've been in this house 9 days, he said. Yeah. 9 days. Yeah. How do you do that? And Emily said, because I have a mother who cuts her pills in half and hides it in her purse, and I've been reading people my whole life to keep them alive. That's all it is. It's not magic. It's just what happens when you're the only one holding the rope. He looked at her a long moment. You cannot spend your whole life punishing yourself for something you couldn't change, she said. Don't. You couldn't have gotten there, Vincent. You were downtown. You were 40 minutes away. You could have picked up that phone and said hello and stayed on it and screamed her name for 11 minutes, and it would have ended exactly the same way. And you know it, and you know it, and the only reason you won't say it out loud is because if it's true, then you've wasted 11 years. Vincent's whole face changed, and Emily saw it and could not stop it and would not have stopped it if she could. Get out of my house, he said. No. Get out of my house. You want me out because I said the true thing, Emily said, and you told me tonight, you told me 9 minutes ago that the honest way was the only thing you had left. So which is it? You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what You don't know what you're talking about, he roared, and the sound of it hit the walls of that house like a car crash, and Emily flinched all the way to her spine. You want to know why I can't say it. You want the real reason because I did call her back. Emily froze. What? Vincent was breathing like he'd run somewhere. What did you say? I called her back, he said. When, 9 minutes later, the floor went out from under Emily Carter for the second time in one night. 9 minutes, she said. 9 minutes, Vincent said. I finished the scotch and I thought about it and I thought she's alone in that big house and she's scared of the wind and I'm being cruel and I picked the phone up and I called her back at 4:15 and it rang. And it rang. And it rang. His hand went over his mouth for 1 second and came away. And on the 6th ring, somebody picked it up. And it wasn't her. And it wasn't Dell. Dell wasn't there yet. Dell was 2 minutes out. Emily could not breathe. Who picked up? He did, Vincent said. The word landed in that hallway like a body. He picked up my sister's phone, Vincent said. And he didn't say anything. He just breathed. And I said her name. I said Sophia. And he hung up. Emily's hands were over her mouth, and she was making a sound she had never made before. So don't tell me it would have ended the same, Vincent said. Don't tell me I couldn't have changed it, because I have had 11 years and the finest mind for logistics in this city, and I have run it, Emily. I have run the tape 10,000 times, and here is what I know. If I say hello at 4:06, if I say one word, if I say hello, Soph, what's wrong, and I stay on that line, and she runs and she goes out the front instead of down the hall, that's 40 seconds. That's all it needed to be 40 seconds, and she's on the lawn, and Dell's coming with the flashlight, and she's 57 years old somewhere right now, with a husband and kids and a job putting people back together. His voice broke finally all the way through, and Emily watched the most feared man in Chicago break in half in his own hallway. 40 seconds, I had them. I had them in my hand, and I spent them on a scotch. He stopped. He put his hand on the wall. So no, he said. I don't get to put it down. You don't get to give me that. Emily got up off the floor. She crossed the hall. And she did the thing that nobody in Chicago had done in 11 years, the thing that would have gotten a grown man killed in another room, in another year. And she did it without thinking, because she had spent her whole life with her hands out toward people who were falling. She put her arms around him. Vincent Callahan went rigid, every muscle in his body locked. She felt all of it like holding a door in a storm. He did not push her away. He did not put his arms around her. He stood there in his shirt sleeves in the dark, with a waitress holding on to him, and he did not move for 11 full seconds. And then something went out of him. His forehead came down on her shoulder. That was all. That was the whole thing. He did not sob. He did not shake. He just put his forehead on the shoulder of a girl in a cheap shirt who had $11 in her checking account, and he stayed there. "You didn't kill her," Emily said. "Don't." "You didn't kill her, Vincent." "Emily." "He killed her," she said. "The man in the house killed her, not you. And I'm not saying you didn't do anything wrong, because you did. You said 4 words, and they were the wrong 4 words, and you're going to carry that till you die, and you should. You should." Her voice was shaking. "But you didn't kill her. And you have spent 11 years taking his crime and putting it on your own back, because that's easier than the truth. And the truth is that you weren't there and you couldn't be everywhere, and you're not God. You're just a man who was drinking a scotch on the worst night of his life, like every other man on this earth." Vincent did not move. "You want to know what I think you're really afraid of?" she said. "No. You're afraid that if you put it down for one day, one single day, then that means you can put it down forever," Emily said. "And then who's carrying her? That's it, isn't it? That's the whole thing. You think the weight is the last piece of her you've got left." He made a sound against her shoulder. It was not a word. "I know," she said. "I know. You don't. Vincent, my brother, is 19 years old, and there's a tube in his chest. And I know exactly what you're doing, because I do it every night in my car in the parking lot for 4 minutes, and then I stop, because I've decided that if I stop counting, he dies." Her tears were in his hair. "That's not true either. It's not true for me, and it's not true for you. But we both believe it, don't we? We both believe it all the way down." At 11:58 at night, Vincent Callahan lifted his head. He stepped back. He turned away from her and put himself back together in about 4 seconds, and it was one of the most frightening things Emily had ever watched. A man doing that, the way you'd close a suitcase. "Go home," he said, but it was different now. "Vincent, it's midnight and you have a shift at 11 tomorrow, and your brother's cycle is on the 14th, and you have not slept in 9 days. He straightened his collar. "Go home, Emily. Please, I'm asking. That's all it is tonight." She stood there. "Okay," she said. She was at the top of the stairs when he said her name. "Emily." She turned. "Nobody has touched me in 11 years, he said. She didn't know what to say to that. "I know," she said. At 12:19 in the morning, Tomas drove her home. She did not talk. Neither did he. She got 4 hours of sleep, and at 9:40 the next morning, everything she thought she understood about that man detonated. It started small, the way the worst things do. She was in the estate office at 9 because she could not sleep, and she was doing what she always did, which was counting. She had the 4 years of vendor files. She had the household accounts. She had all of it in front of her because she was going to find a way. She had decided that in the car at midnight, she was going to find a way for Vincent to pay for Carol Voight's treatment that wasn't a transaction, some structure, some fiction, a pool, another pool. She didn't care. She was going to build the man a bridge back to a human being, whether he wanted it or not. And in the third box, under the linen invoices, she found a folder that had no business being in a household file. It was a residential mortgage file. It was thick, and on the tab in someone's small square handwriting was the number of a street address in Cicero, Illinois. Emily stopped breathing. She knew that address better than she knew her own face. She had learned to ride a bike in the alley behind that address. She had taught her brother to ride a bike in that alley. Her mother had planted a lilac on the north side of that address. She opened it. At 9:43 in the morning, Emily Carter found out that the paper on her family's house had been held by Callahan Holdings. Not the bank, not the men with the clipboard on the lawn in April. Him. She went through it page by page. Her hands were so steady it scared her. The original note sold in 2019. The transfer. The servicing company with a name like a law firm, and behind the servicing company, another company, and behind that one, on a signature line in black ink, 4 letters, and a name she had watched sign a check for $2,000. The notice of default was dated February. The sale was April. And clipped to the inside of the folder was a single sheet of paper that was not a legal document at all. It was a printout, a short one, and at the top of it, in that same small square handwriting that had written for the 41 on the back of her check, someone had written one line: "Do not touch this one." Emily sat down on the floor of that office with the folder in her lap. The room was very quiet. She looked at the date on the note. Then she looked at the date on the printout. And then she made a sound like an animal because the printout was dated the 10th of July, the morning after he fired her, the morning after he unfired her. She was still sitting there on the floor when the office door opened at 9:51, and Marco stood in the doorway with his leather folder under his arm, and he looked at what was in her hands, and every drop of blood went out of that man's face. "Put it down," Marco said. "Marco. Emily, put it down right now." "Whose signature is this?" "You need to put that down and walk out of this room." "Marco." Her voice did not sound like hers. "Whose signature is this?" And Marco said, "You don't understand what you're looking at." "Then tell me." "I can't." "You sold my mother's house." "Emily." "You sold my mother's house," she said, and she was standing now, and she did not remember standing. And then he sat me down in a room full of broken glass, and he asked me why the math didn't work. He asked me why I was working 3 jobs. He looked me in the face and he asked me who was dying. He didn't know. He wrote, "Do not touch this one." "On the 10th, Marco shouted, and it was the first time in 19 years anybody had heard Marco raise his voice, and the sound of it stopped her cold. "On the 10th, Emily, look at the date. Look at the date on the paper in your hand, and then look at the date on the sale and tell me what you see, because you're the one who counts everything, so count." Emily looked down. Notice of default February. Sale April. Do not touch this one July 10th. "He wrote it after," she whispered. "He wrote it 11 hours after he met you," Marco said. "He came in at 4 in the morning, and he pulled every file we had with your name on it, and he found that, and he sat in that chair for 2 hours, and he didn't say one word to me. And at 6, he wrote that line, and he handed it to me, and he said, 'Put it in the house file where nobody looks.'" Emily's whole body was shaking. "Why?" "Because he was going to tell you himself," Marco said, "and he hasn't figured out how yet, and it's been 9 days, and every day he doesn't say it. It gets worse, and he knows that. He knows that better than you do." "Marco." "He took your house, Emily," Marco said quietly. "Not on purpose. He's never seen it. He owns 1,100 notes in this county, and he has never seen one of them, and that's not an excuse. That's the crime. That's exactly the crime, and he knows it, and he found it out at 4 in the morning after listening to you say your mother sold the house in April. We didn't sell it. It got sold. There's a difference." Marco's jaw was working. "Do you know what he said when he found it? 2 words. Same as Dell. Same as everything." Emily could not speak. "He said, 'Of course,'" Marco said, and behind Marco in the doorway in his coat with his keys still in his hand, Vincent Callahan said, "Get out, Marco." Marco did not move. That was the thing Emily would remember. 19 years, and Marco had never once stayed in a room after Vincent Callahan told him to leave it, and he stood in that doorway now with his folder under his arm and his jaw working. "Boss, get out. She's been in this house 9 days, and she hasn't eaten since." "Marco." Vincent did not raise his voice. He never had to. "Get out." Marco looked at Emily, and then he did something that told her more about the last 9 days than anything anybody had said out loud. He looked at her like he was leaving her alone with a loaded gun, and he was sorry about it, and he had no choice, and he had been sorry about it for 19 years. The door closed. At 9:54 in the morning, Emily Carter stood in an office in Lake Forest holding the mortgage file on her mother's house. "Say it," she said. "Emily, say it. You made me turn the knob last night. You said that was the honest way, so you say this one out loud. You say the whole sentence, and you don't get to leave any of it out." Vincent put his keys in his pocket. "Callahan Holdings bought the note on your mother's house in 2019, he said. "It went into default in February. It was sold at auction on April 11th. I did not know your name. I did not know the address. I have never seen that street in my life." "That's your defense." "That's not a defense," Vincent said. "That's the crime." Emily's hands started shaking. "Don't do that," she said. "Do what?" "Don't agree with me. Don't stand there and hand me the knife and tell me where to put it. That's what you do, isn't it? That's the trick. You never argue. You just tell the truth so fast and so flat that there's nothing left for anybody to hit." Her voice broke open. "Fight me. Say it wasn't you. Say it was a company. Say it was a system. Say it was some guy in an office who's never met you. Say something so I can hate you like a normal person." "It was me," Vincent said. Emily threw the folder. It hit the wall and came apart, and 4 years of paper went across that beautiful room like snow, and neither of them looked at it. "You asked me why the math didn't work," she said. "I know. You sat there in a chair in that room with the glass everywhere, and you asked me who was dying." She could not get air. "And I told you everything. I told you about the alley, and the bike, and the garbage can, and I told you my mother sold the house in April. And I said we didn't sell it. It got sold, there's a difference. Do you remember that? Do you remember me saying that?" "Yes." "And what did you do?" "I went to the office at 4 a.m, Vincent said, "and I pulled every file with your name in it. And I found it in 20 minutes. And I sat in that chair until 6. And then you wrote, 'Do not touch this one,'" Emily said. 4 words. "You wrote 4 words on a piece of paper, and you put it in a box where nobody looks, and you handed it to Marco, and you said, 'File it,' and then you sent a car to my house on Monday, and you let me walk into your kitchen and meet your cook and count your linens for 9 days. She was crying, and she hated it. 9 days, Vincent. 9 days you looked at me across that table, and you knew." Vincent said nothing. "You watched me count," she said. "You watched me sit in that office and go through 4 years of invoices to find a man stealing from you, and the whole time, the folder with my mother's house in it was in the same box. In the same box, Vincent. You put it where I would find it." And Vincent Callahan said, "Yes." The room stopped. "What?" "I put it in the household file in April of last year," he said. "That's true. That's not a lie. But on the 10th of July, I could have burned it. I could have shredded it at 6 a.m, and you would never have known there was a piece of paper in this world with your mother's address on it and my signature under it. Marco told me to burn it. He stood in that office at 5:40 and he said, 'Boss, burn it,' and I said no." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to find it," Vincent said. Emily could not speak. "That's the answer," he said. "That's the whole answer, and it's uglier than anything you've imagined about me in the last 4 minutes. I didn't tell you because I couldn't. I have not been able to say a true thing to a person's face. In 11 years, Emily, I say them to walls, and I say them to a locked room once a year, and that's it. So I did the only thing I know how to do. I left it where you'd find it, same as the door." "The door," Emily said. "Same as the door. You left the door open, and you left this in a box, and you sat back, and you waited for me to do it for you." "Yes." "That's not honesty," she screamed. "That's cowardice with a bow on it. You didn't confess, Vincent. You built a maze, and you put the confession at the end of it, and you called it a test, and then you got to sit here and watch and feel like you tried. You didn't try. You hid. You hid the worst thing you ever did to me in a box of laundry receipts, and you let me find it with my own hands on the floor of your office, and now I have to carry the finding too." Vincent stood absolutely still. "Yes," he said quietly. "Stop saying yes. There's nothing else to say. You're right." He looked at her. "You are right about every part of it, and I have known you were going to be right about it since 6 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of July, and I woke up every day for 9 days and thought, today she finds it, and I let the day happen anyway, because I wanted the day." His voice went flat and low. "I wanted 9 days of somebody looking at me the way you looked at me, and I knew exactly what it cost, and I let you pay for it." Emily put both hands over her face, then she took them down. "Where is it?" she said. "Where's what?" "The house." Her voice had gone very calm, and it frightened both of them. "You sold it at auction on the 11th of April. Who bought it?" Vincent did not answer. "Vincent?" "Emily." "Who bought my mother's house?" And Vincent Callahan said, "Nobody." The word did not make sense. She heard it, and it did not make sense, and she stood there with her mouth open like a person who has been hit somewhere they cannot see. "What? It didn't sell," he said. "It went to auction, and it didn't clear the reserve, and it came back to the note holder. That's not unusual. Half of them do." It came back to me," Vincent said. "It's been sitting empty since April 11th. Nobody has been in it. The lawn's been cut twice a month by a service out of Berwyn, because that's what the servicer does automatically. I didn't know it existed until 4 in the morning on the 10th of July. He stopped. "And then I knew." Emily's legs went. She caught the edge of the desk. "It's empty," she said. "Yes." "My mother's house is empty." "Yes." "For 3 months, my mother has been sleeping in a rental in Cicero with a space heater and cutting her pills in half, and her house is sitting empty, with nobody in it, because it didn't sell." Her voice went up into a place she had never heard it go. "Because it wasn't good enough. Because a man in an office looked at the house where I learned to ride a bike and said, 'This one's not worth it. Put it in the pile.'" "Emily, is the lilac still there?" Vincent blinked. "What?" "The lilac," Emily said, and now she was sobbing, and she could not stop, and she did not want to. "On the north side. My mother planted it in 1994, the spring my dad left. She planted it the same week, and it has never bloomed. 29 years, not one flower. Everybody told her to dig it up. My grandmother told her to dig it up, and she wouldn't. Her whole face was wet. She said, 'It's not done yet.' Every year, 'It's not done yet.' Is it still there, Vincent? Or did the service out of Berwyn take it out because it looked like a dead bush?" And Vincent Callahan, who owned 1,100 notes in Cook County and had never seen one of them, said, "I don't know." "No," Emily said. "You don't." She wiped her face with the flat of her hand, and she walked past him. "Emily." She stopped in the doorway. She took the check out of her back pocket, the second one. Marco had given it to her on Monday, and she had not deposited it yet because she'd been in the files, because she counted everything, because she wanted to do it on the 14th when it mattered. She put it on the floor. Not on the desk, on the floor. "Don't," Vincent said. "I quit." "Emily, you said any hour of any day," she said. "You stood in that room with the glass and you said you can quit any hour of any day. No contract, no obligation. That was the deal. That was the honest one. Remember? The one I could actually say no to." Vincent's hand came halfway up and stopped. "Take the money," he said. "No." "Emily, your brother's cycle is on the 14th. And Emily Carter turned around in that doorway and said the truest thing anyone had ever said in that house. "I know," she said, "and you know. And that's the part I'm never going to forgive. Not the house, not the note, not April. Because you're right, you never saw it. You own so much of this city that my whole family fits in a rounding error." Her chin was shaking. "It's that you knew about the 14th and you still let me walk around this house for 9 days not knowing. You had the one thing I needed, and you had the one thing that would break me, and you gave me the first one so I wouldn't find the second one. And Vincent, that's not love. I don't know what that is, but it's not love." She walked out. She was on the stairs when he said it. "It's the only way I know how to hold anything," he said. Emily stopped on the 4th step. She did not turn around. "Yeah," she said. "I know. That's what you did to her, too." She heard nothing behind her. Not a word, not a step, nothing all the way down that staircase and across that hall and out the front door of a house with 31 rooms. And the last thing Emily Carter heard as it closed was a sound she recognized instantly and understood completely and would hear in her sleep for a month. A man checking a door. At 11:20 in the morning, she came through the door of the rental in Cicero, and her mother was standing at the sink. "You're home early," Ruth said. "Mom, sit down." "What happened?" "Mom." Ruth turned around and she took one look at her daughter's face and dried her hands very slowly on a dish towel, and she said, "It's about Callahan." "Sit down." "Emily." "Callahan Holdings owned our note," Emily said. Her mother did not move. She did not gasp. She did not put her hand out. She did not do a single one of the things a person does. She folded the dish towel in half and then in half again, and she set it on the edge of the sink, and Emily's whole body went cold. "Mom, sit down, honey. Mom, did you hear what I said?" "I heard you." Callahan Holdings, the man I work for. He owned our house, Mom. He owned the paper on our house, and it went to auction in April, and—" "I know," Ruth said. The kitchen was completely silent. Emily's ears were ringing. "What? Sit down. What did you say?" "Emily Ruth Carter, sit down before you fall down." Emily did not sit down. "You knew." "I saw the name in February," Ruth said. "You saw, on the letter, the default letter. There's a line at the bottom, way at the bottom, in the small type that says who the investor is, and it said a company name I didn't recognize, and I looked it up at the library on the computer because I couldn't sleep." Ruth's hands were flat on the counter. "It took me 20 minutes. It's not hidden, honey. It's not a secret. It's just small." "You knew since February." "Yes." "You knew in April when they came with the clipboard, you knew whose." "Yes. And when I came home Saturday night with a check for $2,000, Emily said, and her voice was going somewhere terrible. "And I put it on this table, right there, and you asked me whose car that was, and you asked me what he wanted, and you told me there was no amount of money on this earth worth what men like that take. You knew—" Ruth Carter closed her eyes. "Yes," she said. Emily grabbed the back of a chair with both hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because your brother's cycle is on the 14th, Ruth said. The words hit the room like a body. "Because I sat at this table on Saturday morning with the phone in my hand," Ruth said, "and a number written on the back of an envelope, and I was going to call St. Ambrose and ask them if we could skip one." "Skip one, Emily. That was my plan. That was the best thing I could think of in 63 years on this earth for my own son. And at 4 a.m, my daughter walked in that door and put $2,000 on my table." Her voice cracked all the way down the middle. "And I knew whose money it was. And I looked at it and I did the arithmetic, and God forgive me, I took it." Emily could not breathe. "You let me go up there?" "Yes." "You let me get in a car with a man who took your house?" "Yes." "Mom, you told me to be careful. You told me there's no amount of money." "I know what I told you," Ruth shouted, and Emily flinched because Ruth Carter did not shout. Ruth Carter had not shouted since 1994. "I know exactly what I told you. I told you the thing a mother says because I am a mother, and I have to say it. And then I took the check because I am also the woman who has to hand a hospital $8,000 on the 14th or watch her son go without. Both of those women live in this body, Emily. Both of them. You want to know what that's like? Ask me in 30 years. Ruth stopped. Her hands were on the counter and she was breathing wrong. "Mom, I'm all right. Mom, sit. I'm all right." Ruth's eyes came up, and they were red, and they were the eyes of a woman who had been awake for 4 months. "I'm going to tell you the rest of it, and then I'm going to be quiet forever, all right? Here's the rest of it. I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what you'd do." Her chin came up. "You'd have walked in there and thrown it in his face and quit." Emily's mouth opened. "Which is what you did," Ruth said. "Isn't it? This morning. That's why you're standing in my kitchen at 11:20 on a Wednesday with your keys still in your hand." Emily said nothing. "Where's the check, honey?" Ruth said quietly. "Mom, where's the check?" "I left it," Emily whispered. "You left it?" "On the floor. I put it on the floor." Ruth Carter put her hand over her mouth, and Emily watched her mother do something she had never seen and would never unsee. She watched her mother be proud of her and destroyed by her at the exact same moment, in the exact same second, in one face. "Okay," Ruth said. "Mom, I couldn't." "I know. He knew about Danny. He knew about the 14th, and he still didn't." "I know, honey." "Say I did the right thing," Emily said. And she was 7 years old, and it was 1994, and she was standing in a kitchen asking her mother a question that had no answer. "Please, say I did the right thing." And Ruth Carter said, "You did the right thing." Then she turned around and put her hands in the dishwater, and she said in a perfectly normal voice, "I'll call them about the 14th. Emily worked her shift that night. She was 11 minutes late, first time in 14 months. Ray, the floor manager, met her at the side station with his hands up. "Emily, don't. Nobody told me anything, I'm just saying." "Ray." "He called," Ray said. Emily stopped with her apron half-tied. "What, 2 hours ago?" Ray would not look at her. "Callahan. He called me, personally, on my cell phone. I've worked here 6 years, and that man has never called my cell phone in his life." Emily's heart was going like a bird. "What did he say?" "He said if Emily Carter comes in tonight, don't put her in the section by the window." Ray shrugged, and his face was helpless. "That's it. That's the whole call. He said don't put her by the window, and I said okay, boss, and he hung up." Emily stood there with her apron strings in her hands. "Why the window?" Ray said. "What's by the window?" And Emily said, "It's next to the private room." Delia was rolling silverware. She had been rolling silverware for 19 years, and she did not look up when Emily sat down across from her, and for about a minute, neither of them said a word, and then Delia pushed half the bin across the table. Emily looked at it. "Roll," Delia said. "Delia." "I'm not asking you anything. I'm not saying anything. There's 400 forks in that bin, and I'd like to go home before Thursday." Delia's hands did not stop. "So roll." And Emily rolled silverware next to a woman who had told her 4 days ago that nobody in that building would ever have her back again, and neither of them ever mentioned it, and it was the kindest thing anybody had done for her in a week. At 10:05, Emily's phone went off in her apron. She saw the screen and her stomach dropped because it said St. Ambrose, and St. Ambrose did not call at 10:05 at night for good reasons. She answered it in the alley. "This is Emily." "Ms. Carter, this is Renata at St. Ambrose. I'm on 4. "Is it Danny?" "No, ma'am, it's your mother." The world tilted. "My mother's at home." "Ma'am, your mother came in with your brother at 6 o'clock for his labs, and she collapsed in the hallway on 4 about 40 minutes ago." Emily's hand went out and found the brick wall. "Ma'am, I'm here." Her pressure was 190/120 when we got to her. "She's stable now, she's awake, she's talking, but Ms. Carter, I need to tell you she is not." "I'm coming." "Ms. Carter, I have to ask you something and I need you to listen." The nurse's voice changed. "Is your mother taking her medication?" Emily closed her eyes. She stood in an alley behind a restaurant in Chicago at 10:07 at night, and she counted. $40. 30 days. 2 pills a day, at half a pill a day, is 60 days out of a 30-day bottle. "She's been cutting them in half," Emily said. The nurse was quiet. "For how long?" "Since April." At 10:41, she was on the 4th floor. Her mother was in a bed in a hallway because there were no rooms in a hallway on a gurney with a curtain that did not close all the way, and she was gray and she was small, and when she saw Emily she said, "Don't tell your brother." "Mom." "Emily Ruth." "Mom, he's 40 feet away." "Don't you tell that boy," Ruth said. "He's got enough. He's got enough, honey." And Emily Carter sat down in a plastic chair in a hospital hallway with a brother in a room on one side of her and a mother on a gurney on the other side of her. And she put her head in her hands, and for the first time in 4 months, she did not count anything at all because there was nothing left to count. 2 floors down at 11:50, a woman at the billing desk was still at her computer because a phone call had come in at 11:15, and it had not been a normal phone call. Emily did not know that yet. She found out on Friday. She went down to billing on Friday at 9 because she was going to do the thing she had been rehearsing in her car since Wednesday, which was beg. She had the whole speech. She'd practiced it. She was going to say, "My mother needs a bed, and my brother needs the 14th, and I have $11, and I will sign anything. I will sign anything you put in front of me, and I will pay it until I am 70. She got as far as her name. "Carter," the woman said. "Carter. "Yes." "Emily Carter for Ruth and Daniel." "Yes." The woman typed. Then she stopped typing. Then she looked at the screen for a long time, and Emily watched her face and knew that face. She had seen that face in a bank on Cermak 8 days ago, and her whole body went to ice. "Ma'am," Emily said, "whatever it says I can explain, I can. Miss Carter." The woman turned the monitor a few inches. "Your balance is 0. Emily heard the words, and they did not go anywhere. "What?" "Both accounts. Your mother's and your brother's." "That's a mistake." "It's not a mistake." That's a mistake, Emily said, because my brother's cycle was yesterday and it's $6,000, and my mother has been down here since Wednesday, and there is no world in which— Ms. Carter, the accounts were settled Wednesday night. The woman was looking at her with something like fear. Both of them, in full, including the outstanding from March forward. March forward. Emily's ears were roaring. How much? Ma'am, how much was the outstanding from March forward? The woman looked at the screen. $94,612, she said. Emily Carter sat down on the floor of a hospital billing office. The woman came around the desk. Ma'am, do you need— Who paid it? I can't. Who paid it? Ms. Carter, I'm not permitted to. Was it Callahan? Emily said, and her voice went through that little room like glass. Was it Vincent Callahan? Just say yes. You don't have to say anything else. Just say yes or no. And the woman said very carefully, the payment came in from a firm. There's no name on it. Ma'am, I've been here 19 years, and I have never seen a settlement come in like that, and I'm going to tell you the one thing I'm allowed to tell you, and then I have to stop. She swallowed. There was an instruction attached. What did it say? It said the patient's family is not to be informed of the source, under any circumstances, ever. Emily sat on that floor. There's a second line, the woman said. What? There's a second line on the instruction, and I've read it about 11 times since Wednesday, because I don't understand it. She looked at her screen. It says if she asks, tell her it wasn't him. Emily made a sound. Do you understand that? The woman said. And Emily Carter, sitting on a floor, said, yeah, I understand it. Because it meant he had known she would come down here. He had known she would ask. He had sat somewhere on Wednesday night with a phone, and he had thought it all the way through to this exact minute, this exact woman, this exact question, and he had built her an out, not for him, for her, so she could take the money and still hate him, so she wouldn't owe him. He had spent $94,000 and then spent one more sentence making sure it bought him absolutely nothing. At 11:40 on Friday, Emily Carter drove to Lake Forest. Nobody stopped her at the gate. That told her something. 9 days, and they had never changed the code. Not on Wednesday, not Thursday, not after she'd thrown a folder at his wall and put a check on his floor. Lucia opened the door. She took one look and said, "Oh, honey, where is he?" "Emily, where is he, Lucia?" "He's in the office," Lucia said. "He hasn't left it since Wednesday." "Since Wednesday?" "He sleeps in the chair," Lucia said. "Marco brings him things and he doesn't eat them." "Emily." The cook caught her wrist. "Whatever you came to say, he's not going to fight you. I want you to know that before you go in there, because I've been in this house 9 years and there's nothing left in there to fight." Emily walked in. Vincent was standing at the window with his back to her. Marco was in the chair by the door, and Marco stood up when he saw her and looked at his boss and then walked out without a word and closed the door. $94,612, Emily said. Vincent did not turn around. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Vincent." "You should sit down. You've been in a hospital hallway for 2 days." "How do you know that?" "Because I own the hospital's landlord," Vincent said. "That's not a joke, Emily. That's not a threat. That's just the answer. I own the ground under half the buildings you've ever walked into, and I have never once in my life walked into any of them." "Turn around." "No. Turn around, Vincent." "I'd rather not." "Why?" "Because I look like a man who's been in a chair since Wednesday," he said. "And I have exactly one thing left, and it's that you've never seen me look like anything." Emily stood in the middle of that room. "They told me it wasn't you," she said. "Good. You wrote the line." "I don't know what you're talking about." "If she asks, tell her it wasn't him." Her voice cracked. "That's not a lie, Vincent. That's a lie you built for me. That's a lie you built and installed and paid for so I could carry it out of that building without owing you anything. And I want you to know it didn't work, because I knew in about 1 second, because it's the most you thing I have ever heard in my life." Vincent's shoulders moved. "Why?" Emily said. "Emily, why? You want me to say it out loud? You want to know what I thought in the car all the way up here?" She was crying now. "I thought, here it comes. Here's the conditions. Here's the leash. I thought he's going to say, come back to work, or he's going to say, don't tell anybody, or he's going to want something, because that's how it works. That's how it has always worked my whole life, my entire life. Nobody hands you $94,000 for nothing. Her hands were fists. So say it. Say the condition. Whatever it is, say it, because I've been holding my breath for 2 days and I want to know what I owe. Vincent turned around, and Emily's breath went out of her because Lucia had been right. There was nothing left in there to fight. He looked like a photograph of himself that somebody had left in the rain. Nothing, he said. Vincent, you don't owe me anything. There's no condition. There's no second part. He said it in a voice she had never heard out of him. I did it Wednesday night at 11:15 from this chair with my phone, and it took 9 minutes, Emily. 9 minutes. $94,000. And it took 9 minutes and a phone call, and I have had the ability to do that every single day of the 14 months you have worked for me. Emily's hand went over her mouth. That's the thing I've been sitting in this chair with since Wednesday, Vincent said. Not the house, not the note. That. His voice went to nothing. You slept in your car in my parking lot in March. Did you know? I know that Marco knew. Petey knew. Everybody knew. There's a girl who sleeps in her car between the cleaning job and the shift, and it went around that building like it was weather, like it was just something that happens, and nobody said a word to me, and I never asked, because I don't ask, because if you don't ask, then you don't know, and if you don't know, then it's not yours. Emily could not speak. 9 minutes, Vincent said. It's not that I couldn't. It's that nobody ever put it in front of me, and I built a life where nobody ever would. So why now? Because on Wednesday you stood in that doorway and you said, it's not love, he said. And you were right, and I have been trying since Wednesday to do one thing that isn't that, and this is the only thing I could think of that you couldn't refuse. He almost smiled. It was terrible. I had to make it so you couldn't say no. That's what I am, Emily. Even doing the one clean thing, I did it by taking your choice away. I don't know another way. I've never known another way. Emily wiped her face. And then she said the thing she had driven 41 minutes to say, and it came out of her steady and quiet, and it went into him like a knife. It doesn't fix it, she said. Vincent nodded once. I know, he said. No, listen to me. She stepped forward. You paid $94,000, and I will thank you for it until the day I die, because my brother got his cycle yesterday, and my mother's got a room instead of a hallway, and I'm not too proud to say that. I'm not. You did that. It's real. Emily. And it doesn't fix it, she said. It doesn't buy back April. It doesn't put the lilac back in the ground. It doesn't undo the fact that you had the folder in your hand for 9 days and said nothing. And Vincent, if you think that check makes us even, then you learn nothing, because that's exactly what Dell's swimming pool is. That's exactly the same thing. 2 men who can't say a sentence out loud, so they move money around instead for 11 years and call it an arrangement. Vincent Callahan stood very still. You want to know what you owe me, Emily said. You asked, so here it is. You don't owe me $1. You owe me a change. That's not a thing you can buy. No, she said. It's not. The room was silent for a long time. How? He said. And that stopped her, because he did not say it like an argument. He said it like a man asking directions in a country where he did not speak the language. How? Vincent said again. You say change. Everybody says change. I'm 38 years old, and I have been this since I was 19, and I don't know what the first thing is. So tell me the first thing, not the whole road. One thing. Tell me one thing, and I'll do it. Emily looked at him, and she thought about a 66-year-old man sitting on an overturned bucket, saying, my heart's going like a rabbit. Say her name to Dell, she said. Vincent went white. No. That's the first thing. Emily, no. You asked. Ask me for something else. There isn't anything else, she shouted. That's the whole thing. That's the only thing in this entire house that's real, Vincent. You've got a man out there in a gatehouse who has been carrying your sister for 11 years and stealing from you for 4 just to make you look at him, and you won't say her name, and you won't fire him, and you won't pay for Carol, and you call that mercy. She was shaking. It's not mercy. It's the same thing you did to me. You'd rather move money in the dark forever than say 4 words to a person's face. You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand exactly what I'm asking." "He held her," Vincent said, and his voice came apart. "He held her, Emily. He was on that floor. He knows what her face looked like at the end, and I don't. I don't. I was at a bar with my phone turned over, and he was on the floor holding her, and he is the only person alive who was there, and if I walk out to that gatehouse and I say her name out loud, then he's going to tell me." The room went silent. "He's going to tell me," Vincent whispered. "That's what happens. He's been waiting 11 years to tell me, and I've been running for 11 years so he can't, and the pool, the invoices, the whole thing, that's not him asking to be caught. That's him asking to be asked." Emily's eyes were streaming. "Yeah," she said. "It is. I can't hear it. I know. Emily, I can't hear it." "I know," she said, "and you're going to." Vincent Callahan stood in his office and looked at a 25-year-old waitress with $11 in her checking account, and Emily saw the exact moment it happened, the exact second the way you see a wall go. "Will you come with me?" he said, and it was the smallest voice she had ever heard from a grown man. "No," Emily said. He flinched. "No," she said again, and she was crying, "because if I come with you, then I'm the reason you did it. And then in 10 years when it hurts, you'll look at me and know who made you. And I have watched what you do to people you owe things to." She wiped her face. "You go alone. That's the first thing. You go alone, or it doesn't count." Vincent stood there for a long moment. Then he nodded. "When?" Emily said. "Tonight." "Vincent." "Tonight," he said. But it wasn't tonight. It was Saturday, and it was not the gatehouse, and nothing about it went the way either of them planned, because at 2:17 on Saturday morning, Emily's phone rang, and it was Lucia, and Lucia was crying so hard she could not get the words out in order. Lucia, slow down." "He's gone." "What?" "He left at midnight, and he took the car himself. He never takes the car himself, and Marco can't find him, and Emily, listen to me." The cook's voice broke apart. "Dell's not in the gatehouse either. Carol called here at 1. She's been calling since 1. Dell didn't come home." Emily was already reaching for her keys. "Where?" she said, and Lucia said, "Honey, there's only one place either of them would go." Emily said, "The house." "The house," Lucia said. "He hasn't been in that room in 11 years, Lucia. He told me himself once a year on the 9th. Emily, he's not in the room." Emily stopped with her keys in her hand. "What?" "I went up," Lucia said. "First thing, soon as Marco called me, I went up that hall and I turned on every light in it, and I opened that door, honey. I opened it myself, 9 years I've never touched it. And I opened it at midnight and it's empty, and the bed's made and the sweatshirt's gone off the chair." Emily's whole body went cold. "The sweatshirt's gone. It's gone. Lucia, what does that mean?" And Lucia said, "It means he's not coming back to it." At 2:31 in the morning, Emily Carter was on the expressway, going 85 in a car with bald tires. She called Marco at 2:33. He picked up on the first ring, which he never did. "Where are you?" he said. "Northbound. Marco, where is he?" "I don't know." "You've known where that man is every minute for 19 years. "I know," Marco said, and his voice did something Emily had never heard it do. "I know. I've had a phone in my pocket for 19 years that tells me where his car is, and he knows I have it. And at 11:50 tonight, he came out of that office and he put his phone on my desk and he looked at me and he said, 'Marco, go home to your wife. That's all. That's the whole thing. Go home to your wife.'" A breath. "I've worked for that man since I was 41 years old, and he has never once asked me about my wife." Emily's hands were shaking on the wheel. "That's not a goodbye," she said. "Emily." "Tell me that's not a goodbye, Marco." "I don't know what it is," Marco said. "I've been sitting in a parking lot for 2 hours trying to decide, and I don't know, and I'm 60 years old, and I'm scared, and I haven't been scared since 1990. Where would he go? I told you. Marco, you know, you've known since the phone hit the desk, so say it." The line was quiet. "There's 3 places," Marco said. "The room. He's not in the room. The restaurant. He's not at the restaurant. I've been there twice. The alarm's set. The lot's empty." "And the third?" Marco didn't answer. Marco. Cicero, he said. The world went silent around Emily Carter at 85 miles an hour. What? He's got the keys, Marco said. Emily, he's got the keys to your mother's house. They came back with the note in April. There's an envelope in the servicer's box with your mother's address on it and 2 keys in it, and it's been sitting in a drawer in my office since the 11th of April, and I checked that drawer at midnight, and the envelope's gone. Emily crossed 4 lanes without looking. He's in my house. Emily, he's in my mother's house. Emily, listen to me. Marco's voice went hard. Dell's gone too. Dell's truck has gone off the property and Carol's been calling since 1, and I want you to think about that for 1 second before you get there. 2 men, 11 years. One of them just gave away his phone. Emily's throat closed. You think Dell would hurt him? No, Marco said. That's not what I'm scared of. Then what? And Marco said, I'm scared he asked him to. At 3:14 in the morning, Emily Carter turned onto the street she had learned to ride a bike on, and there were 2 vehicles in front of her mother's house, a black car she had ridden in 9 times, and a groundskeeper's truck with a ladder rack. The porch light was on. Nobody had paid that electric bill since April. Emily sat behind the wheel for 4 seconds and stared at a light that could not be on. And then she understood that a man who owned the ground under half the city could turn a porch light on in an empty house in Cicero with 1 phone call, and that he had done it before he ever drove out there, which meant he had planned it, which meant this was not an accident, which meant she was about to walk into something a man had built. She went up the walk. The lilac was still there. She saw it out of the corner of her eye on the north side, 29 years old, dead looking exactly the way it had looked her whole life. And something in her chest broke loose, and she had to stop for 1 second with her hand on the rail. The front door was open 4 inches. She pushed it. And she heard her own kitchen, the kitchen she had grown up in, with 2 men's voices in it, and the voices were low and one of them was crying. It was not Dell. Emily stopped in the hall. Say it again, Vincent said. Boss. Dell. Say it again. I can't keep saying it. You've been waiting 11 years to say it, Vincent said. So say it again. And Dell Voigt, 66 years old, sitting at a table in an empty house in Cicero at 3:15 in the morning, said she wasn't scared. Emily put her hand over her mouth. That's all, Dell said. That's the whole thing. That's what I've been carrying around like a rock in my shoe for 11 years. She wasn't scared, Vincent. I got there, and I got down on that floor, and I put my hand under her head, and she looked right at me, and I knew her. She'd been feeding my dog for 4 years, and she wasn't scared. She was mad. Something happened in that kitchen. A chair moved. Mad, Vincent said. Mad as hell. Dell's voice cracked. She was trying to talk and she couldn't get the air, and she kept trying anyway, and I said, honey, don't talk, and she wouldn't quit. She was fighting me to get it out, and she got 2 words, and then she went. What were they? Vincent, what were the 2 words, Dell? And Dell Voigt said, call him. Emily's legs went out from under her, and she caught the wall. Call him, Vincent said. That's it. She said, call him. She said, call him, Dell said. And I had my phone in my hand already. I'd already called you. It was ringing in my hand while she said it, and I told her, honey, I'm calling him right now, he's coming. And she heard me. I know she heard me, because she stopped fighting. Dell was sobbing now, a 66-year-old man in an empty kitchen. She stopped fighting and she let go Vincent. And I've thought about that every day for 11 years, and I don't know if I did right or if I lied to her because you weren't coming. You were downtown. You weren't coming, and I told her you were. The kitchen was completely silent. Emily could not breathe. You told her I was coming, Vincent said. Yes. That's not a lie, Dell. It was a lie. It's not a lie, Vincent said, and his voice was going, because I was coming. I got in the car at 4:18. I did 110 on the Edens with no lights on, and I got there at 4:51, and there were 9 cars in my driveway, and you were sitting on my front step with her blood on your hands, and you looked up at me, and you didn't say one word to me for 11 years. You never asked me, Dell shouted. I know. 11 years, Vincent. The old man's voice tore open. 11 years I've stood out there in that gatehouse and watched you check them doors like a crazy man twice, 3 times, 4, and every single night I thought, tonight, he's going to walk out here and ask me. And you never did. You looked through me. 19 years, I worked for your family, and after that night you looked at me like I was a hedge. Because you were there. Yeah. You were there and I wasn't! Vincent screamed, and the sound of it went through that house like a train, and Emily flinched with her whole spine. You were on the floor with my sister, and I was at a bar with my phone turned face down, and every time I looked at you, I saw the 11 minutes I didn't have. You think I was angry at you? I was jealous of you? I have been jealous of a 66-year-old man for 11 years because he got to hold her and I didn't. The house was silent. Emily was crying so hard she had to press both hands over her mouth. Oh, boss, Dell said. Don't. Vincent, don't you say my name like that? Somebody's got to say it like that, Dell said. And then Emily heard the worst sound she had ever heard in her life, which was Vincent Callahan trying not to make a sound and failing in her mother's kitchen. A chair scraped. Sit down, boss. I need to. Sit down. Dell, sit down, Del Voigt said, before you fall down and let an old man get you a glass of water in a house that ain't got any water in it, and let's both of us admit we're sitting in a dead woman's kitchen at 3 a.m. because neither one of us has got the guts to sit in our own. Emily wiped her face with both hands. Then she walked into the kitchen she grew up in. Both men looked up. Vincent Callahan was sitting at her mother's table with his elbows on it, and his face wrecked, and there was a girl's sweatshirt folded on the table in front of him, sleeves right side out. And Emily saw it and understood exactly what he had driven here to do, and her heart split down the middle. Nobody said anything for 4 seconds. Then Dell stood up. Well, he said, I'll be outside. Dell, Emily said. Honey, I've said my whole life's worth in the last 2 hours. I got nothing left in the tank. He put his hand on Vincent's shoulder on the way past. He left it there for 1 second, and Vincent Callahan, who had not been touched in 11 years and then had been twice in 1 week, put his own hand up over the old man's and held it. Neither of them said anything. Dell went out. The screen door banged the way it had banged Emily's whole childhood, and she made a sound and Vincent looked up. You paid the light bill, Emily said. I turned the power on at 10 o'clock last night. Why? Because I wasn't going to sit in the dark in your mother's house, he said. That seemed like the least of it. Emily sat down across from him, at her table, in her chair, the one she'd sat in for 18 years. You gave Marco your phone. Yes. He's been sitting in the parking lot for 2 hours thinking you were going to kill yourself. Vincent closed his eyes. That's not what it was, he said. Then what was it, Vincent? Because a man doesn't hand over his phone at midnight and drive to an empty house with... I gave him his life back, Vincent said. Emily stopped. He's 60, Vincent said. He has a wife named Angela, and I learned her name 3 days ago from a Christmas card in a drawer, Emily. 3 days ago. 19 years. His voice was flat and ruined. So, at 11:50, I put my phone on his desk, and I told him to go home to his wife, and I meant tonight, and I also meant the other thing, and he knew I meant the other thing, and he sat in a parking lot for 2 hours because he didn't know how to be a person who wasn't holding my phone. He looked up. That's not a suicide note. That's the first honest wage I've ever paid anybody. Emily put her hand over her mouth. You went to Dell. I went to the gatehouse at midnight, Vincent said. Alone, like you said. And I stood outside that door for 19 minutes. Emily's eyes closed. 19 minutes, she said. I've timed everything for 11 years. It's the only thing I've got. He almost laughed. It was awful. 19 minutes on a gravel path in front of an old man's door, and I couldn't lift my hand. And then the door opened, and he was standing there in his undershirt, and he looked at me, and he said, "Took you long enough." Emily made a sound that was half a sob. And I said her name, Vincent said. The kitchen was quiet. I said, Dell, I want to know about Sophia. And he put his coat on. He didn't say a word. He put his coat on, and he got his keys, and he said, not here, and I said, where? And he said, somewhere neither of us has to live afterward. Vincent's hand went flat on the table. And I said, I know a house. Emily could not breathe. "You brought him here?" "I brought him here. To my house." "Emily, you brought the man who held your sister to the house you took from my mother," she said, "and it came out of her broken, and you sat him down at my table." "Yes." "Why?" And Vincent Callahan said, "Because there's nowhere in this world I can go that I haven't already taken from somebody." The words landed in that kitchen, and nobody moved. "That's the whole answer," he said. "I sat in that car outside, and I ran every address I own, and there isn't one. There's 1,100 of them in this county, and there's not one room in one of them I could sit down in and hear what I was about to hear, because every single one of them belongs to somebody I've never seen." He looked at her. "So I came to the only one where I know the name." Emily put her head in her hands. "That's the sickest thing you've ever said." "I know." "Vincent, I know what it is. It's not penance," she shouted, and her head came up. "You keep doing this. You keep finding the most painful possible version of every single thing and doing that one, and you think that's honesty, and it's not. It's the same thing. It's the door. It's checking the door. It's 4 times instead of once, because 4 hurts more." Vincent said nothing. "You could have sat in a diner," Emily said. "You could have sat in a Denny's on Cermak with that man for the price of 2 coffees and heard the exact same words." Vincent looked at her, and then he said very quietly, "I didn't think of that." Emily started laughing. She could not help it. It came out of her sideways at the exact wrong moment, one hard broken sound, and her hand went up over her mouth with that horrified look, and she saw the exact second it hit him, and his face came apart all the way, and he put his hand over his eyes. "There it is," he said. "Vincent, there it is. I'm sorry." "Don't," he said. "Don't you dare. That's the second time in my life, and I'd like to keep it." They sat there. At 3:41 in the morning, in a kitchen with no dishes in it, Emily said, "What did he tell you?" "You heard it?" "I heard the end." "That's the whole thing," Vincent said. "That is the entire thing, Emily. 11 years, 2 words. She said, 'Call him.'" His voice went. "She wasn't scared," he said. "She was mad. She was mad because I said I'd call her back, and she was going to make sure somebody called me. That's my sister. That is exactly my sister on the floor of my own house, with 40 seconds left, being furious at me." His hand was over his mouth. "I've spent 11 years imagining her terrified. Every night, every single night for 11 years I have laid in that house and seen her face, and she was terrified in every one of them, and she wasn't. She was mad at me. She was mad at me, and she got 2 words out, and she used both of them on my phone number." Emily was crying without any sound at all. "And Dell told her I was coming," Vincent said, "and she believed him, and she stopped fighting, and she let go." "Vincent, she let go because she thought I was coming." "You were coming," Emily said. "I was 33 minutes away." "You were coming." "Emily, you were coming," Emily said, and she reached across her mother's table and took his hand in both of hers, and he let her. "And she was right. She was right about you, Vincent. That's what you can't stand. She had 40 seconds on this earth, and she spent them betting on you, and she won. She won. You got in the car. You did 110 with no lights." Her voice broke. "She wasn't wrong about her brother. Everybody else in this city has been wrong about you for 11 years, and the one person who wasn't was a 22-year-old girl on a floor, and she was right, and you have spent 11 years calling her a liar." Vincent Callahan put his forehead down on the table in a house in Cicero and wept. Emily held his hand. She held it for a long time. She did not say anything else. There was nothing else, and she knew it, and it was the first thing in 11 years that had cost him no money at all. At 4:11, the son was thinking about it. Vincent lifted his head. "You want to know the worst part," he said. "There's a worse part. Dell asked me a question, at the end, right before you came in." He wiped his face with the flat of his hand. He said, "Boss, can I ask you one?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said if I'd have called you before I ran, if I'd have stood there in that gatehouse and dialed you instead of running with the spade, would you have picked up? Emily's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" I said no. Silence. "I said no, Dell, I wouldn't have picked up because it was 4 in the morning and you were the groundskeeper, and I don't take calls from groundskeepers," Vincent said. That's what I told him, and he nodded. He nodded like a man who already knew, because he did know, because that's why he ran instead of calling. He knew in 1962 seconds that the phone wouldn't work, so he took a garden spade and he ran across 400 yards of dark, and he was right. His jaw was shaking. The man knew me better than my own sister did. Emily could not speak. And I've paid him $62,000 a year for 19 years, Vincent said, and I've let him steal $200,000 because I couldn't stand to say thank you, and his wife is dying of the same thing your brother has, and he learned to use a spreadsheet at night at 62 years old to invent a swimming pool because that was easier than asking me. Vincent, everybody would rather do anything than ask me, he said. That's what I built. That's my whole life. I made a world where the safest thing to do is steal from me quietly, and I called it respect. Emily wiped her eyes. So change it, she said. How? Go outside. Vincent looked at her. He's on my porch, Emily said. He's 66 and he's been up since midnight, and he's sitting on my mother's porch because he thinks he doesn't have the right to sit in the car. Go outside and say the sentence. Emily. Say the sentence, Vincent. You don't understand what it costs. I know exactly what it costs, she said. It costs you being clean. That's the whole thing. That's what you told me in the hallway. You said you don't get to be clean. You said, if you pay for Carol, then it's a transaction, and it's paid, and it's over, and you don't deserve that. Right? Yes. You're not paying him, Emily said. You're not buying anything. You already tried that, Vincent. You've been buying it in $4,000 monthly installments for 4 years, and it hasn't worked because that's not what he wants. She leaned forward. He wants to be thanked. That's it. That's the whole crime. That old man committed $200,000 of fraud to make a rich man look at him, and it didn't even work. Vincent sat very still. And you're going to walk out on that porch and say 2 words, Emily said, and it's going to be the first thing you've ever given anybody that didn't come out of an account. And Carol, you pay for Carol, Emily said, after, not instead, after. And you do it out loud to his face in daylight, and you let him say no if he wants to, because that's the part you've never done in your whole life, Vincent. You've never once let anybody say no to you. Her voice cracked. Except me. And look what it did. Vincent Callahan looked at her across the kitchen table. What did it do? He said. And Emily said, it got you here. At 4:26 in the morning, Vincent Callahan walked out onto a porch in Cicero, Illinois. Emily did not go with him. She stood in the hall where she could not see and could not help hearing because the windows in that house had never closed right, and her mother had complained about it for 29 years. She heard the screen door. She heard Dell say, boss, then nothing. 9 seconds. Emily counted them. She counted everything. And then she heard Vincent Callahan say, thank you. That was all. 2 words. She heard nothing after that for a long time. And then she heard a sound she would never be able to describe to anybody, as long as she lived, which was a 66-year-old man on a porch step making a noise like something coming out of the ground. And then she heard Vincent say in a voice that was barely there, I've got you, Dell, I've got you. Emily slid down the wall of her mother's hallway and sat on the floor with her arms around her knees and cried like a child. The lilac bloomed in September. That was the part nobody believed afterward. Ruth Carter told it at every table she sat at for the rest of her life, and nobody ever believed her, and she never cared because she had a photograph. It bloomed in September out of season 29 years late, 3 weeks after she moved back in. That was August the 2nd. The way it happened was this. On the 18th of July, Marco came to a rental in Cicero with his leather folder, and he sat down at a table across from a 63-year-old woman with high blood pressure, and he did not say a word for about 10 seconds. Mrs. Carter, I know who you are, Ruth said. Yes, ma'am. You're the one with the folder. Yes, ma'am. And Ruth Carter said, well, open it. He opened it. Callahan Holdings held the note on your property, Marco said. It went to auction on April 11th, and it did not sell, and it reverted. It's been vacant since. Mr. Callahan has instructed me to transfer the deed to you free and clear. Ruth did not move. No, she said. Emily's head came up. Mom? No, Ruth said again. Marco blinked. In 19 years, Marco had never heard the word no in a room where he was holding a folder. Mrs. Carter. I want to buy it, Ruth said. Ma'am, I want to buy my house, Ruth Carter said, and her chin was going and her hands were flat on the table. And I want a piece of paper that says I bought it, and I want to owe somebody something on the first of the month for the rest of my life. Because that's what it is. That's what a house is. That's what it has always been. And if that man hands it to me for nothing, then I didn't lose it in April. I gave it away, and I didn't give it away. Her voice broke. It was taken, and I want it back the same way it left, with paper. The room was silent. Marco looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll have to call him." "So call him." Marco went into the hallway and made a phone call that lasted 19 seconds. He came back. "He says $1, Marco said. Ruth Carter's eyes filled. "He says he can't sell it to you for what it's worth because that's the thing that took it in the first place," Marco said. "And he can't give it to you for nothing because you just told him why. So it's $1, and there's paper, and there's a closing, and you'll sign 9 documents, and he says..." Marco stopped. He looked at his folder. He was a man who had worked 19 years without ever having to say something like this out loud. "He says he'd like you to make him wait for it. He says he'd like to be the one waiting on the first of the month for once." Ruth Carter put both hands over her face. Then she reached into her purse and she took out a dollar bill that had been folded in half in the bottom of that purse since God knows when, and she put it on the table. "Tell him it's late," she said. "Danny came home in November. Not fixed. Nobody said fixed. They said the word remission, and they said it carefully the way you carry something across a room that is full of people. And Danny Carter came out of St. Ambrose at 141 pounds with a duffel bag, and he stood on the sidewalk and looked at the house. He learned to ride a bike behind and said, Huh, Emily said. "I thought it'd be bigger. You're taller." "I'm not taller, Em. I'm 19. "You're 19 and a half. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Don't count," Danny said. And Emily Carter stood on a sidewalk in Cicero and laughed until she had to sit down on the curb, and her brother sat down next to her and he did the voice, the stupid one, the one from when he was 6, and she let him. Vincent Callahan did not come to the house, not in August, not in September, not once. Emily did not go back to Lake Forest either. That was the part people could never make sense of afterward, and it was the only part that mattered. Because on the 22nd of July, on the last day of 30, Emily Carter stood in an office and put a set of keys on a desk, and Vincent said, "Stay." "No." "Emily." "No," she said. "And I need you to hear why, and I need you to not fight me and Vincent. If you fight me on this, I swear to God, I'll never come back." He didn't fight her. He stood there. "I've got $94,000 of your money in my brother's arm," Emily said. "My mother's got a house because of you. If I stay in this house now, then for the rest of my life, every day when you look at me, you're going to see a debt. And when I look at you, I'm going to see a rescue." Her voice was shaking. "And that's not 2 people. That's a man and something he bought. I've watched you do it to Marco for 19 years, and I've watched you do it to Dell for 11, and I'm not going to be the 3rd one." Vincent's jaw moved. "So what do you want?" he said. "I want a year." "A year?" "A year where I don't work for you?" Emily said. "A year where you don't pay me anything, and I don't answer to you, and there's no car at my curb, and you don't call Ray about the window, and you don't own the ground under my job." She was crying, and she kept going. "A year where I go be a person, and you go be a person, and neither one of us is holding anything over the other one's head. And then I don't know. That's not good enough." "That's the only true answer there is," she said. "You want me to promise you the end. You want a contract. That's what you do, Vincent. That's what you've always done. You buy the ending in advance because you can't stand not knowing, and it's exactly what you did to Sophia. You built her the safest room in Illinois so you'd never have to not know, and it killed her." Vincent flinched like she'd hit him. The room went silent. "That's the cruelest thing anybody's ever said to me," he said. "I know," Emily said, "and it's true. And I'm the only one who'll say it, and that's why you want me to stay, and that's exactly why I can't." Vincent Callahan stood at a window with his back to a girl for a long time. "A year," he said. "A year." "What happens if you don't come back?" And Emily Carter said, "Then you'll have found out you could live through it." He didn't turn around. "Go on then," he said. She got as far as the door. "Emily," she stopped. "The sweatshirt," he said. "What about it?" "I washed it," Vincent said. Emily's hand went to her mouth. "It's been on that chair 11 years, he said, sleeves inside out, and I brought it out to that house in Cicero because I thought I was going to burn it in your mother's yard. That was the plan. That was the whole plan. That's what I drove out there to do." He put his hands in his pockets. "And then I sat in a kitchen and found out my sister spent her last 2 words on me and wasn't scared. And I drove home at 5 in the morning, and I put that thing in a machine and I washed it, and I folded it, and I put it in a drawer. In a drawer, Emily. With clothes." His voice went. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes," she said. "Say it." "You put her away," Emily said, "instead of down." "Yes." "Vincent, go," he said, "before I offer you something." She went. He paid for Carol Voigt in daylight. That was the 5th of August at 11 in the morning on a gravel path in front of a gatehouse, and Vincent Callahan said it out loud, like a man reading a will, and Del Voigt said no. He said no. He said, "Boss, I stole 200 grand off you." And Vincent said, "I know. So we're square." "We're not square." Vincent. "Del, we are not square," Vincent said. "And we're never going to be square, and I've spent 11 years trying to get square with you, because square means it's over, and I don't want it to be over. That's what the money was. 4 years of that money was me making sure neither one of us ever had to be done." His voice was shaking. "So no, you're not going to make it a transaction now. You've been stealing from a man who let you. That's not theft, that's just 2 cowards with a system. It stops today." Del Voigt stood on a gravel path with his hat in his hands. "What am I supposed to say?" he said. "Say yes," Vincent said, "and then say her name to me sometimes. That's the price. That's the whole price, Del. Once in a while, when you feel like it, you say my sister's name out loud in a room I'm standing in because you're the only person left alive who was ever in a room with her, and I've got nobody else." Del Voigt cried on a gravel path for the 2nd time in 11 years. Then he said yes. Carol Voigt lived another 4 years. That's not nothing. 4 years is 1,460 days, and Emily knew the number because Emily counted everything. And when Carol died in a bed in her own house, with her husband holding her hand and not on a floor and not alone, Vincent Callahan sat in the back row of a church in Berwyn in a coat, and he did not send flowers and he did not pay for anything, and he sat there like a man, and afterward Del put a hand on his shoulder and left it there. That's all that happened. That's the whole thing. A year is a long time. Emily got a job managing a restaurant in Andersonville that Vincent Callahan did not own, and she checked the whole chain of it. She spent a week checking, and Marco laughed at her when she called to ask. "You called me to ask if he owns Andersonville," Marco said. "I called to ask if he owns my building." "He doesn't own your building." "Marco, he doesn't own your building, Emily. He looked. I want you to know that he looked because I'm not going to lie to you. He had me pull it in about 9 minutes after you told him where you were working." A pause. "And then he told me to sell 2 properties on that block." Emily's throat closed. "He sold them." "He sold 4 buildings in this city this year," Marco said. "Do you know how many he's ever sold before none? 0 in 19 years. Marco's voice did something strange. "He's got a list on his desk. Handwritten. It's every residential note he holds in Cook County, 1,100 of them, and he's going through them, Emily, one at a time. He's got a man driving out to look at them, with his eyes." Emily sat down. "Why?" she said. And Marco said because a girl told him he'd never seen one. 14 months went by, not 12 and 14. Emily was 4 months late, and she knew exactly how late she was because she counted everything. She walked into that restaurant at 2:17 in the morning on the 9th of July. He was in the private room. He was sitting in the booth. Not standing, sitting. In the corner booth in Sophia's chair, the one nobody had sat in for 12 years, and there was a glass of water in front of him, and nothing else. And every table in that room was standing on its legs. He looked up. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. "You're 4 months late," Vincent said. "I know." "I counted." "I know," Emily said. Vincent Callahan looked at a 26-year-old woman standing in his doorway, and something went through his face that had never been there before, and Emily saw it and knew it and had waited 14 months to see it. He was afraid, not of losing, of hoping. "Are you here about a job?" he said. "No." "Emily, Vincent." Her voice was shaking. "Ask me the question." "I don't know the question." "Yes, you do." "I've never asked anybody a question in my life," he said. "I tell people things. I've never asked. I don't know how I've never had to. I'm 39 years old, and I have never once had to want something out loud." "Then tonight's the night," Emily said. Vincent Callahan sat in his dead sister's chair in an empty restaurant at 2:17 in the morning, and he put his hands flat on the table and he said it. "Will you stay?" And Emily said, "Why?" "Emily." "Say why, Vincent. Say all of it. You made me turn a knob once. Turn this one." And he said, "Because I've had 14 months to find out whether I could live through it, and I could. That's the terrible part. I've lived through it. I got up and I went to work and I sold 4 buildings, and I looked at 1,100 houses, and I said my sister's name out loud to an old man every Sunday for a year." His voice broke. "I lived through it fine, and I don't want to. That's all I've got. That's the whole sentence. I can live without you, and I don't want to, and I have never in my life wanted something I didn't need. And I'm asking Emily. I'm asking, there's no leash, there's no check, there's nothing on this table but a glass of water. Will you stay?" Emily Carter stood in that doorway with her whole life behind her. $11, 41 shifts, a mother cutting pills in half, a brother in an alley on a bike laughing on the ground. And then she laughed. It came out sideways at the exact wrong moment, one bright, broken sound in a silent room, and her hand went up over her mouth, and Vincent Callahan closed his eyes like a man standing in the sun for the first time in 12 years. "Yes," she said. She sat down across from him. She did not sit in Sophia's chair. She never did not once not in all the years that came after, and he never asked her to. And that was the whole marriage right there in the first 4 seconds of it. They were not saved by a rich man, they were not saved by money, and they were not saved by a rescue, and no one in that room that night was carried out of anything by somebody stronger. A waitress fell asleep in the wrong chair, and a man who owned a city found out he had never once looked at anything he owned, and it took 2 words on a floor and 11 minutes in the dark, and 2 more words on a porch in Cicero to put it right. People are not saved by the powerful. They are saved the day somebody finally looks at them and does not look away. Emily Carter looked, and Vincent Callahan, for the first time in his life, did not check the door.